Good evening, Vacaville. This is the special meeting of the Vacaville City Council for December 4th, 2025. It's 6 p.m. May I have a roll call?
Councilmember Stockton? Here. Councilmember Ritchie? Councilmember Silva? Here. Councilmember Freeman? Here. Councilmember Wiley? Here. Vice Mayor Chapman? Here. Mayor Clay?
Here. And if you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, since this is a public meeting, I'm going to start with item number 2 is public comment. This is not your typical public comment. This would be the opportunity for anyone in the public to discuss any items that are on tonight's agenda, which is different than anything that's not on our agenda. Seeing none, I'll move on to consent. We have 2 items. We actually have 1 item on consent.
The person stood up in the back, and then you started speaking, so she sat back down.
Okay, I didn't see that. Does somebody here want to speak?
I sent him a letter. I sent it to city clerk, but it came back. So
Why don't you come forward then?
It's for, ask her if it's for the homeless topic.
Well, is this for tonight's agenda?
Oh.
Yes, come on forward.
So, Mayor,
Yes.
will there be an opportunity later to come forward, or is this the
This is
only
it.
opportunity? So anyone who wants to speak on
That's right.
either item needs to speak now.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said. I said this is not your normal meeting, so this would be the opportunity to just discuss anything that's on tonight's agenda versus a normal meeting. This would be the time to speak on anything that's not on our agenda.
And it won't be open to later,
No.
like we usually do.
Correct.
That's the big point.
Yes. So even though you may have sent an email, this is your opportunity to share.
City Council members, tonight's meeting regarding warming center and cooling centers. I asked my District 3 Representative Michael Silva, but was directed to, due to Brown Act, to being able to forward. Let's see. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm writing this email to ask the Vacaville City Council members to have compassion for all our residents, whether housed or unhoused. Please change the activation threshold for warming center to be higher at a high temp than 32 degrees. I believe the city would free up hospital congestion, save up on cleanup, least investigations with regard to picking up of those that have died from exposure, ER visits, and hospitalizations, as people go to the ER to escape cold, rain, wind, and harsh weather. Even a 40-degree threshold sleeping outside, I don't believe is safe, in rain or not, with wind gusts. Vacaville has the highest wind gusts in all of the country. This is why Travis Air Force Base was put in Fairfield, as wind gusts, wind updrafts, help planes take off. Vacaville has had multiple deaths because of not having warming centers open at higher temperatures than 32 degrees threshold. Food is something that also should be provided to help body recover from climate changes while at the warming center. It is 2 consecutive days before activation at a 32 degree for warming center as of now. Changing this threshold to 1 day could even save further lives of our residents that are unhoused or don't have proper heating at home. I attend regularly homeless roundtable meetings and see the cost by the dollar amount and the human casualties of not acting on changing thresholds. City residents have been making thresholds, city residents save by making thresholds higher on warming center. With regard to the cooling centers, should be activated at 90 degrees per the agenda chart says extreme caution for those with health issues, which I know myself and others suffer from. Let's see, and reduces the costs the city pays out dealing with ramifications of not extending help at better temperatures. We should also see temperature adverse health effects in low temp charts. How many people are hospitalized or seeking shelter at ER because of weather, and at what temperature? I know this will give us a better insight and understanding at how City Council can truly improve lives of all Vacaville residents. Thank you for your time and have a blessed day. Lorraine.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? I apologize, I didn't see you. It's fairly dark in the backs. All right, I will go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting. We have one consent item. Anyone in the public or on the council wishing to pull the item for discussion?
A motion to approve 3A.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we will move on to our business of the evening. For the reason why we have this special meeting is item 4A, Economic Development Update.
Good evening, Mayor Carley, Vice Mayor Chapman, members of the City Council. Don Burris here, Director of Economic Development Services, joined by my colleague Slater Matsky, Economic Development Manager. This evening, the Economic Development Department will provide you with an update on the initiatives currently being implemented and lead a discussion with our guest subject matter experts on our current initiatives. They will also provide recommendations on recalibrating our initiatives to reflect the emerging industries, trends, and market conditions. Those experts we have with us here this evening are Matt Gardner, who is, sorry, let me advance the slide, who is the Americas Advisory Leader for Life Sciences for CBRE. Lance Hastings, President and CEO of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, and Chris Rico, President and CEO of the Solano County Economic Development. We will be hearing from all those gentlemen here in just a few minutes. We often address the council to make sure that the council and the public understands what the role is of local economic development, which is crucial to encouraging growth, creating jobs, and ensuring that residents have a better quality of life. This often involves cities investing in initiatives and strategies that promote local economic development. These strategies guide the community growth by setting objectives to create jobs, attract and retain business, and most importantly, for us as a city to enhance the tax base that in turn fortifies the city's general fund. To create these initiatives, the department uses an asset-based approach. So an asset-based approach aligns with the city's strengths. So if we have the workforce, if we have the ecosystem, then it's much, much easier to attract very specific industries and grow our existing industries. We've done that while cultivating and fortifying our life science sectors. We use that same approach to develop the Downtown Retail Action Plan and Storefront Improvement Program, which are all meant to enhance and implement the downtown specific plan. We're currently working on the distributed energy feasibility study with Larson and Toubro, which we hope to have wrapped by the end of this month. And that study will also provide us with a budget to see how we can implement some of those distributed energy resources, which could actually be a major competitive advantage for the city of Vacaville if we were able to provide an alternative energy source in our business parks. As you know, energy is a major concern with PG&E's current inability to provide the power that our businesses and future businesses need to operate. And then last, we're working on strengthening our workforce partnerships. We have excellent partnerships with Solano College, the University of California, Davis, our own California Biomanufacturing Center, Life Space Labs, and our Solano County Workforce Development Board. Of the initiatives, the city has had some success with the implementation of our biotechnology and advanced manufacturing strategy. The life science industry experienced robust growth between 2020 and 22, investing more than $200 billion in facilities around the country, and the city of Vacaville was fortunate to secure some of that investment. Our guest speaker this evening, Matt Gardner, will elaborate more on the state of life sciences in just a few minutes. But to help the council and the public understand what this investment means to the city, we engaged Dr. Robert Eiler, Chief Economist for Economic Forensics and Analytics, to prepare a complete economic impact analysis, which I believe was in your council packets, which provides a more detailed analysis of what the impacts really mean for the city of Vacaville once the life science companies acquired land build out their proposed facilities. Dr. Eiler did ask if I extend his apologies for not being able to attend tonight's meeting and answer your questions. However, if you do have questions about the data represented in the report, I can provide those to him, and he'll provide a response for you all. So the analysis of the report demonstrates that the greatest impact will come at build-out, and year-to-date, the city's general fund has received a little over $300,000 from property tax, transfer tax, and fees. I'll turn the rest of the presentation over to my colleague, Slater Matsky.
Great, thank you, Don. Thank you, Council, Mayor. Just to continue on what Don was first covering there, the second part of the presentation is going to be focused on advanced manufacturing and some of the current trends that we're seeing, as well as projected forecasts moving forward. This plays into the refresh and recalibration that Don was mentioning with the economic development strategy that we're currently undertaking right now. The purpose of updating this strategy is to make sure that Vacaville is well-positioned, remains competitive as major industry trends shift statewide, nationally, and internationally. Solano County is currently entering a period of reindustrialization. You'll hear more from our subject matter experts tonight on that issue, with manufacturing projected to grow in double digits over the coming years. We all know Travis Air Force Base is a foundational partner for not only the county, but also for Vacaville specifically, and that'll be a key component of all of our economic development strategies moving forward. At this phase, we've just began the high-level scan of potential areas of focus for the strategic refresh that we'll be working on in conjunction with City Manager, Council, and the community over the coming months. At a high level, foundationally, we look at small businesses, startups, and local firms, as well as the visitor economy and retail, life sciences and biomanufacturing, as Don mentioned, advanced manufacturing that we'll be covering tonight, as well as clean technologies, food and ag tech, aerospace and defense, robotics and automation, building technologies, also known as build tech, and advanced transportation, and all the subsectors underneath all those umbrellas. Over the coming months, we'll be diving into the data, doing research and assessment analysis to fine-tune those specific areas of focus. But that's sort of the state of play right now and the go forward. So I guess we can move to our first speaker, if you like.
Our first speaker will be Matt Gardner from CBRE, and Matt's going to present to us the state of the life science economy on a national, international, and local level. Matt Gardner.
Look at that.
Look at that.
I'm pleased to be with you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for a little bit of your time this evening. I think I'm going to go off script just for a moment, Don, and just express appreciation for Mr. Hastings and Mr. Rico. I've had the pleasure of working with CMTA for longer than I care to admit, so appreciate Lance having a very broad representation to share experience with you. But I also want to just point out, not to embarrass anyone, but Mr. Rico's background prior to coming up to Solano was the head of innovation for the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation. As you'll get into this agenda this evening, I'd encourage you to just keep in mind that sometimes we get stuck in a mindset that it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. You have a prophet. having worked on the South Bay Curve and the aerospace industry and all that's entailed there, it's a tremendous resource that Chris is here. And so I'd encourage you, as we get into these topics, to keep that in mind when you're looking ahead at what the rest of the advanced manufacturing picture could include, given his experience. Tremendous background. Thanks, Don. Go ahead. I just want to point out that I think we've had a short-term window. My role here this evening is to try and give you a snapshot of where the biotech industry is right now, given what we've experienced here over the last 4 years or so. We caught lightning in a bottle during the COVID period there and had a rush of new investment, and obviously we'd all like to see that come to fruition. And I hope this evening I can impart upon you some conditions that we're seeing in the industry overall. So starting here, I think if you had only been in the biotech industry since 2020, you might think that the two lower peaks to the far right of that chart, which is the NASDAQ Biotechnology Index, represented a very steep drop in the industry. But if you've been in the industry longer than 5 years, you would know that all of that represents all-time highs. And so I think the long-run perspective here is that you could see a little blue rise to the far right of the chart, which represents this last few weeks. The NASDAQ Biotech Index is up about 23% in this last stretch of time this year and is back up again for the year. And so I think what we're seeing is we can now identify what the bottom was beginning in 2022. Well, if you'll recall, unfortunately, that times perfectly to when we saw our investors arrive and start to think through their plans. So I think what we're seeing now, thank you, Don, is that we're seeing this return to an influx of capital to the industry. And one of the things that this indicates, and these are good things to keep an eye on, is that when the XBI turns back up as an index, many of those sort of mid-cap companies that use public equities markets to raise capital go back out and do something called a follow-on offering. And so if you were to look at NASDAQ's follow-on offerings, this is all public information, so I'm not saying anything out of school here. If you were to look at the NASDAQ secondary offerings for the last 2 years, you would find them heavily weighted to biotech. The good news here, and I'll talk more about what's happening specifically inside the industry in a minute, is that the industry's been able to raise capital again. There's a little trickle of an IPO window that's opening up. That's great. We need that. The industry needs that. Venture capitalists need that to recycle the dollars that they've invested. But directly speaking to the mid-caps who may be pre-first product approval, so in that development stage of trying to launch their first product where they don't have regular cash flow, this is a very delicate time, and it's a really improving external condition that they're able to raise external capital. Go ahead, Don. So this is the cumulative capital raise that the industry is going through. And what you see this year, which is to the far right there, year to date through Q3, is that we're back above 2022 levels. I'm going to make an outrageous statement. 2020 and 2021, which showed incredible new highs, were not a new normal. They were an aberration. And I think it's fair to say in hindsight now that we can see 2021 did not set a repeatable, sustainable level of capital raising. It was an outlier. So it is comforting to see that we're back to 2022 levels. In fact, if you took out 2020 and 2021, we'd be at the second greatest year of fundraising in the biotech industry's entire history. It's hard to see that when we're in the midst of wondering when this takes its next steps in progress. But for the industry on the whole, this is a pretty spectacular period of innovation. And so what occurred from 2015 to 2021 was the greatest investment in science that the industry's ever benefited from. And I'll show you the product pipeline in a second that has resulted from that, because it would have felt like, if you were watching this, again, as a new observer of the industry, like there was a contraction, and there wasn't. And I'll show you what that pipeline looks like in a minute. Go ahead, Don. Oh, here it is. Thanks, Don. How lucky. So what we're seeing here, this is a real eye chart, so I apologize. I'll try and decipher for you what you're looking at. What you're seeing is the cumulative pipeline of the entire industry. So that's expressed in a very, very small, compressed format, but basically combining the traditional protein-based part of the industry, which is our friends at Lonza down the road here. Monoclonal antibodies, the largest sort of revenue-producing part of the industry at the moment. The second, the sort of pinkish line, is an entirely new category. It didn't exist 15 years ago. That area of sort of peptides, I'll simplify this for you. Those are the GLP-1s. They've taken over the world. That entire area of the product pipeline in the industry has emerged just in the last decade. And so all of that sort of rush of investment and innovation is relatively new. The next couple of areas that are related to cell and gene are also new. The CRISPR technology that led us into a new round of innovations around genetic therapy and cell therapy were a really highly necessary refresh on part of the industry, which had struggled since the 1990s. There were some highly visible adverse events in cell and gene therapy in the 1990s, early 2000s that caused that industry to have to stop and rethink how it would approach treatments. And it really did take 20 years for that part of the industry to come back and figure this out, helped along by CRISPR as a technology. The analogy I would give you is prior to that, we were recombining DNA. Mike probably should explain this, but the previous technology would have been like smashing DNA with a hammer and then ramming it back together. CRISPR is like taking a scissors to DNA and elegantly snipping it and putting it back as artfully as possible. And so that has led to a tremendous leap in that part of the pipeline. Now, if you were walking around the halls of the venture-backed part of the industry in 2023, you would have probably wanted to wear black and wonder when the funeral was. It was a real dark time for a lot of companies downsizing, and we had companies sort of going through really rough board meetings with their investors, having to come up with scenarios for downsizing, and even we had some CEOs talking about their investors asking them for the doomsday scenario. What if they have to shut down a bunch of their drug programs? That was a very real state of being around that stretch. The capital markets had altogether stopped for them too in 2022 and 2023. What's refreshing about this in terms of the product is the science did not die. And so again, I just want to go back to that long-term perspective. It felt rough. There's still more science than there has ever been before coming out of the industry. And so that's the good news story here is we've seen a few things have to slow down. We've seen some companies have to focus on their lead drugs. That's a very natural part of what our industry goes through in the cycle. Sometimes we've got to sort of pare things down, slow down the science, slow down the burn rate, and we're sort of coming out of that now. And I think it's fair to say when you look at the XBI, you'll be able to see in hindsight, we'll be back to all-time highs in Q1 of 2026, and you will wonder how those speed bumps even occurred when things are flowing again. Go ahead, Don.
Matt, if I may,
Yeah.
For the council's knowledge, the city manager, myself, and the mayor have been meeting with our biotech companies. We have recently met with Polaris, LG Chem, and Transwestern, the three of which had provided some reassurances to us that they do plan to move forward with developing on their land and building new campuses. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, we have a meeting with Agenus Bio, and we're still in the process of scheduling a meeting with Rainin, Mettler-Toledo Rainin, who indicated that they were also interested in expanding their operations. So we are seeing some movement, not much, but those companies did indicate their commitment to building on their properties.
As just a placeholder of a prediction, occasionally a company in the biotech industry will die out, and I'm here to just point out to you that the pipeline is so robust, there's another. And so I think what we were facing in 2018 in this discussion was an interest in diversifying away from one large employer dominating the landscape, and I think we've achieved that. A goal here might be, in the medium term, to make sure that the base of those biomanufacturers is broad enough to sustain through a bump in any one of them. And I think we'll be able to get to a point like that. This is the GLP-1 technology I was referring to. Obviously, it's taken over the world. Between Novo Nordisk and its primary competitor, we've seen north of $30 billion invested in new manufacturing capacity in the last 2 years. These announcements are still coming. Those investments are still being made. They're being made everywhere from Northern Europe to Houston, Texas. And so I think we continue to see those major players in that landscape make catch-up investments. This is what I mean by having expected a contraction and then not finding one. The cell and gene space certainly had to go through a belt tightening. Keep in mind, if you're a pre-product company, when you're still working on your R&D stage, you basically are investing in three things: people, products, and places. And when your access to capital is constrained, you need to slow all three of those things down. And so we saw a real slowdown in expansion in the industry. We also saw a dip in headcount. So I would just point out, relatively speaking, the headcount dip during that stretch was 0.8% of the industry's total headcount. That's less than occurred in the defense contraction. It's less than occurred in the global financial crisis. It's less than occurred in the dot-com implosion. And so interesting that it felt like tumbleweeds rolling through town, but 0.8% is really not a major correction. And so we didn't really see a contraction in the overall industry. Go ahead, Tom. The other thing that's sort of driving that reinvestment is new product launches. And so in addition to the GLP-1s, we've seen a great many new innovations, including a bunch of cell and gene therapies. So we've talked a little bit about this before, but having a cure for sickle cell disease is pretty spectacular. That is a one-dose, single-dose cure. It actually, ironically enough, is something that caused the reimbursement system to sort of buckle under the cost of the drug. And so a lot of very smart people have gone back to sort of redesign how we're going to pay for expensive treatment. That's a different discussion for a different day. But the good news is they've come out of that process with a very different mechanism for reimbursement. So the industry on the whole had to kind of pause while everyone went through that exercise, and they've come out of that with a pretty spectacular new program. So there's a great deal of innovation still coming from the industry. And I think the best news about experiencing basically a 2-year pause in the capital market overall is that we didn't see a lot of very promising science wither on the vine and go away. It's still there, and it's still coming along. Go ahead, Don. Record revenue is sort of pushing the industry forward. I'm going to just try and take us up to 10,000 feet for just a second to sort of give you an idea of one of the major industry factors that's driving those markets. That record revenue is mostly going into the leading sort of top 25, top 50 pharma companies on the planet. They're also starting an acquisition binge that's probably going to set people's hair on fire and break all kinds of records. And there are a few reasons why. One is the entire free cash flow of pharma could buy all of the biotech industry in less than 3 years. That's how much pharma basically invests in its revenue going back into R&D and product development. So we'll expect that cycle to continue. In fact, the last couple of weeks, there's been an acquisition almost every day. But there's another external factor that's really important to them. Keep this in mind. The patent cliff facing some of the leading pharma companies is significant. So products like Keytruda, which is made by Merck, goes off patent in, I think, 2029. And so they're looking at this as needing to replace that revenue with additional products. So that revenue is partly getting reinvested in acquisitions, and that process will continue as well. Go ahead, Don. What we've seen happen this year, this is just in 2025, is more than $500 billion in new manufacturing announcements in the United States. And so this is a pretty spectacular record that we've seen companies entering into. This has really been everywhere from mid-cap European companies all the way to the top industry leaders, every single one of them, soup to nuts. And so this sort of record hot streak of new investments is really just getting in motion, and it really has landed just at the very beginning of a new era of manufacturing in the U.S. So I think there are a number of factors that go into this. Go ahead, Don. That we're seeing the initial round of decisions get made into where those companies are headed. And again, apologies for the eye chart. But in brief, there are a number of factors going into every single one of those decisions, just to make sure that we keep eyes on what the major contributing factors are. Power, water, and people are the main issues that affect these decisions. You have a number of inherent advantages here, not the least of which is people and the existing training program that's been here for 27 years. But other regions are catching up with that. And so to the extent that you've got a bunch of levers to pull and push to think through all those factors for those site selection decisions, they're all important. And I think California's been a little bit hamstrung in incentives for a while, so that is a minor issue. It's not a sort of top-line news item, but between power, water, and people, you've really got primary inputs into this decision-making process for those players. And I think that's where the state of the industry ends. I just want to briefly update you on RAMP, I think is the next few pages, Don. Thanks. We wanted to just give you sort of a near the end update on the training program that we established in partnership with you a couple of years ago. We're winding down this program. The ARPA grant dollars that went into this are waning in the last days here of the overall program. Go ahead, Don. We've had really a fantastic experience with this, but also wanted to make sure we connected it to what we're seeing in training trends around the whole industry. So we kept eyes on the organization BIO and its assessment of workforce trends in the whole industry. They've done, in partnership with the National Network of Biotech Institutes, a study on workforce trends. What this tells us is, and I won't read the whole chart for you, but what this really tells us is we're on track with the right career fields that we chose to emphasize here. That between the manufacturing technicians and the quality positions, you'll see them referenced over and over and over again. Those are really the programs we focused on. We wanted to make sure we provided stackable certificates that are less than degreed. So you could have completed all of our programs, all 4 programs, come out of there with 15 to 20 certificates in less than 1 semester. And so this was not designed to be a degree program in any way. It was meant to essentially hopefully stir career interests, and for those that want to go further, to be able to parlay into Solano College or programs like that where they could get more formal credentials in the industry. Go ahead, Don. So again, just sort of giving a sense of what companies are telling surveyors that they're going to be hiring looking ahead. We still felt like, other than sort of, we weren't trying to do, sort of basic biology for research science here. We're basically getting confirmation that we were on track with some fields where we could fill non-technical backgrounds into the areas of highest need for the industry. Go ahead, Don. Again, production, regulatory affairs, quality, those are 3 of the certificate programs that we built for the RAMP program, and we've found those to be digestible, not require deep domain knowledge in biology or other heavy science, and I would say the program's really worked. It's also given us a great cohort model with folks coming out. We've actually been able to do something we've found very few people around the country could do, which was to attract adult learners going back to try and change career tracks. And so the program's been very successful in that sense in helping to give people completely new opportunities, open up new avenues for them, and so that's been very exciting. We've had this conversation nationally with many folks who tried, and it's been a struggle all over the country trying to do something like this. So we're very proud of having been able to pull something together that where the rubber meets the road that way. We added, as you may recall, we added a bunch of soft skills to the program, very high touch feel going in, throughout, and then coming out as well. And so we found that in addition to allowing every single student to have a self-paced course in case they have work or family or kids or what have you, you could have done this on your own time over a month or 2 years. And still have the support and sort of guidance all the way through the process. And so in that sense, the approach, we think, ended up being very highly effective. 100% of the people who went through the program coming out of this with individual career counseling, completely new resumes and practice interviews, was a tremendously effective way to make sure that we're creating a soft skill program that couldn't be taught just by, going to going into the undergrad program at UC Berkeley or something like that. It's a very different approach. Hopefully you've seen these things yourselves. We've had quite a few programs around the city, including a couple of career fairs at the college, and just have really enjoyed that exposure with the students getting to meet lots of employers. We had, on one occasion, even Don Burris giving practice interviews with dozens and dozens of students in the program. So I don't know, I didn't get reviews on Don's interview skills, but hopefully those went well for everybody involved. Thanks, Don. So again, just on the 4 programs that were built, these were intended to be non-technical with no technical background requirements. And I think in that sense, highly applicable to anyone from any background. And it's really has worked out for them. Go ahead. The number one goal of this, in fact, if you started this program with us before we even submitted for the grant in 2021, asking any employer with a process in place, they would all have said at that time they couldn't hire for the positions they already had open, let alone future curves. So keep an eye on that curve. It's going to continue to be a disconnect for the whole industry. And so this is something that we want to keep sight on. In fact, even though the federal grant program has come to a close, we can see opportunity to potentially cobble together partners to keep that aspect of this program going, potentially in a new partnership or some kind of renewed group of partners involved. Go ahead. So just a quick hit on the numbers. I don't want to spend too much time here because we will produce a final report for you when the last report comes to a close. It's still in progress now, but couldn't be happier with having 192 folks have gone through it. The number of certificates that have been completed in the program. So very, very proud of what we've heard from those that have gone through. We're also going to, by the time we come back to you with the final report, have done a bit of a job survey for those that have finished and see how they've put those skills to work in their new roles. Really, again, as diverse as it gets, but you already know this is the #1 most diverse MSA in the country, and the student population that went through the program shows that as well. I think we had some parameters on location. We turned out not to need to put guardrails around it much, just based on sort of self-select in the incoming student population. For those that have been concerned about encouraging women into fields in science, this is a great outcome. I think we've had efforts underway for women in science for a long time. Obviously, that's a disproportionate turnout, so very excited about seeing that kind of signs of interest. So really, really a good outcome. A couple of recent hires. The first one landing in Lonza was a day to pop champagne for the team, so really excited about being able to place some professionals in using the skills that they acquired in the program. So we'll come back with the final report on all those outcomes and some surveys from the participants in the program as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I recall some of our conversations, especially at Bio International, and to see the draw to Vacaville was incredible. What I remember is how proud we were of what RAMP stood for. So hopefully when you come back and really show the like a full report on that, will be also knowing that that's how you get people in an industry, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hand-holding there. There's the certificate program versus a degree to get people to be able to work on a task or a machine or a process. And my hope will be that part of that report will also be how that gets funded in the future, because the industry that's looking for the workforce is going to want to fund it. And so I think that's right. Partnership with the CVC and all the work that you've been doing, that will hopefully come out with a recommendation, not that it just ended with ARPA.
Right, that's right, John. I think, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think we're looking at a variety of possible mechanisms to do that for sort of a renewed approach to the program that might include possibly a focus on just a couple of the programs where there's higher demand, the quality and the technician programs. And we see a range of partners, including some additional counties that have shown interest, as well as employers directly. So we're excited about the possibilities there. As you know, there's also the ETP program that exists, that if you can put together a cohort of 20 or more people, you can work on ETP funds. So we have a few options that we're digging into.
And what I'd like to do for this study session is instead of waiting to the end, at least for each of you, if any of you have a question or comment that you wanted to make specifically, now would be the time to do that. Vice Mayor Chapman?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Saw you a couple of years ago, I believe.
Yes, ma'am.
In your, on the slide of the demographics, did I miss seeing Vacaville?
It was
Solano County.
Mm-hmm.
it was there.
It was lower off the chart.
All the
it was
green
off the chart.
It was the big one.
It was the largest piece of pie.
Oh, I saw that one. No, the slide or two before the last one. Not that.
There it is.
Is that the one that has the cities?
Yes.
Yeah, Vallejo. Is Vacaville on there? Oh, Mercy B.
It was cut off.
It's the really
It's
big
the
one.
big one. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you.
No, it was cut off.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it was trimmed.
got it. Thank you.
Well, it's going to be important that we actually promote programs like this. And it was very obvious when, look, there were other entities, there were other states, there was a state of California, it didn't even hold a candle to, I won't call it a booth, it was the Vacaville Pavilion, and it wasn't just the city, it was the CBC, the RAMP program, everything about from Trans-Western, how to do this. And so I know that it's like anything else. We on the council would want to say, all right, hurry up and start. And I know that I put you and others on the spot the last time, and I said, I'm not going to hold you to it because no one can predict it unless you were thinking you're going to play the lottery as far as when this was going to happen. But it is certainly the reason why I wanted this to be agendized for a study session so that we could hear back and get some reassurances. And, Don, to your point, we have been meeting with these companies, and they are indicating their assurances that they do desire to do this. And so part of this also, as we move forward, will also be what is, the biotech industry is something that we went back and we found that this is a brand that we should promote. What we also know is there's more than one brand here in Vacaville, and I think that that's what we're going to hear. But we appreciate the partnership that we have with you, and we know how to reach you, and appreciate the fact that you have the knowledge that you do. So,
Thank you, sir.
so I will move on to. Did you still have something?
I put it back on.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
Okay.
I have some.
Okay. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The last time you were here, and even today, this evening, you've spoken about, I'm going to say, the dips.
Yes.
The rise in the
Yep.
dips. And I follow the biofuel industry pretty closely because I have a concern, and I've even mentioned the need to diversify. We need to have something to fall back on or to bring in. It's always good in business, in an organization. You mentioned the word trend, and also one of your slides showed where other areas, other states are now offering or getting into the industry. And so that's going to hit us. I'm going to say it's going to hit us due to how expensive California is. And then the situation with the water and power, key components of required. You also mentioned Texas, Houston. That is going to be a drain when the companies look for the best place to go. And it's always the best incentive that is offered to them. What do you see for California? What do you see for us?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I would just say that if you were doing an economic development strategy and this study session influenced that, you'd certainly want to do that SWOT analysis on where those threats are. And California's prosperity is being threatened by Texas's interest in buying it. And so I think what you're asking is something that we live every day here with companies making choices. I would just say, though, it's probably not what you think in the incentives conversation. It's not the first thing on their list, and I would ask the two gentlemen to address this later when they get the chance, too. I think Chris probably lives this every day more than anybody here. It's about the 10th or 12th thing on their list. So it's a factor, but it turns out to be a minor one in the conversation. And in this business, in the biotech landscape, labor is far more important, and skilled labor is top of that list. So I would say if you were watching where those investments are going, you will see people copying you now for these training programs. That's a different threat. And so I think to play to your strengths, you've got things to do there. I would also point out that Don and I attended a University of California retreat, and I took that opportunity to talk about the investment in power. I do think you have to have an answer for that. I don't know what the answer is. They're very smarter people than me are working on those challenges. So I'm not sure what Chris would add to that. But it's definitely an issue for those big kind of smokestack chasing, headline-making investments. To give you one example from a recent investment that was announced in biotech, this is highly unusual. Most of the sort of data center investments that you see are 50 to 100 megawatts, just to give this a scale. Ours are not like that. The biomanufacturing investments might be 5 to 20. One of those recent investments was 80 megawatts for drug manufacturing. And I've never seen anything like that before. So that was probably never going to come here. That's just a level of power demand that's not laying around waiting for a user to come up. But I do think for the 5 to 10 megawatt user, you do want to have an answer ready for when that is, where it would be, and how soon it could be pulled. Those are questions that are very real coming from those large-scale projects, and I think California's struggled with that issue for sure. That's one issue. I think you've got a great answer for water, so I'm less concerned about that. But I do think the reputation of California at the moment, not Vacaville specifically, but California in general, is of high cost and a power problem. And that's hurting you, for sure. So as long as we know what those issues are, I think we can figure out how to address them. But it's definitely, those are threats.
Thank you.
Councilmember Silva.
Yeah, so I'll pose this in a question, but I just want to clarify, do we have the water supply and do we have the power, or does PG&E have the ability through their grid, which is different than other grid to other cities in Solano County, to support the current proposed need?
It's probably done.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Silva. As it stands today, yes, we do have adequate water and power for the life science companies that have already made investments in the city. This week, next week, we'll be meeting with PG&E to get an update on the developments that are happening at the substation. And about 2 years ago, if you all remember, the city of Vacaville took the lead on connecting with our other cities and colleagues to address the power issue with PG&E. We had several conversations with their staff, and at that time learned that the substation was going to undergo some improvements. Those improvements have started. They're scheduled to be completed in 2027 and 2028, which will give us more power for future investment. But those detailed numbers we'll find out once we meet with PG&E staff next week.
And then, thank you. And then, so, and along those lines, when we talk about workforce development and different programs that are here, so, we're talking about, you presented what the city's helped invest in with creating a micro-credential program through dual ed. What about fostering, so what are we seeing in other areas that are successful in securing biomanufacturing plants or life science lab businesses that, what do their education systems look like? Where's their workforce coming? Is it coming from a K-12 pipeline? Yeah. Or is it really what we're seeing here, but on a larger scale of folks from all different walks of life?
Yeah, actually, I'll give you a couple of examples from Texas and North Carolina, two of the states that have benefited from a lot of the recent pharma investments that we've seen announced, sort of making the papers. And then I'm going to contrast that with Virginia, which has had a couple of headline drawers lately and doesn't have the training programs currently, just to sort of, I think, paint that picture. What we've seen basically in sort of Wake County, North Carolina, where a lot of that is concentrated, and in Houston and in the part of Texas that has drawn a few large-scale manufacturers, is a program that's kind of a carbon copy of the Solano College relationship to industry here. To oversimplify this, there are very few high school feeder programs in those parts of the country. In fact, you'd be challenged to find a wet lab in a high school in a lot of those regions. And so I think certainly there are places where they're at the cutting edge. Research Triangle Park has been at the cutting edge for 70 years. It's not, it's not a novelty there. But Houston had to literally buy the program. So they bought curriculum from a community college in Ireland, of all places, and installed the Irish program in that part of Houston where a couple of these projects have gone. So I think what we've seen in those places is brand new community college training literally coming out of the ground, greenfield, neighboring those manufacturing investments. That's also true where companies like Fujifilm, Amgen, and Genentech have built or are starting construction on new manufacturing plants in a place called Holly Springs, North Carolina. And so Wake County didn't have a feeder technology training program down there. They're building a new campus to address it. And so there are other areas in North Carolina that did. They've just grafted that curriculum into a brand new greenfield pop-up campus. So I think what we're seeing is what you could really generally reflect on as a mirror image of what Solano College has done here for so long, that it's done well. More recently, we've seen 3 major investors land in Virginia. And I think there are a number of issues that sort of come together there. First of all, North Carolina's probably attracted disproportionately, for the short term, its limit. They can't produce infinite numbers of new trainees to feed all those investments forever. And so we've seen a couple of recent investors pick Richmond and the surrounding areas in, not Northern Virginia, but sort of in the smaller cities further south. Those have required brand new technician training programs. And so they're kind of building it from scratch. If you look at the investments that have been announced in Charlottesville and Richmond, brand new training partnerships to go with them. And so I think that's, an interesting challenge to sort of the empire or the domain that you've had for a long time as one of the title holders of biomanufacturing. You're being copied now. And so I think how you innovate there and add elements like the cell and gene program, I think are important. Keeping up with things that the industry is looking for and staying ahead of that is always going to be a challenge. But I think there's reasons for hope there and optimism about keeping up with innovation. And typically what we've seen in industries like this, and I don't mean to keep putting balls on the tee for Chris, but I'm going to do it again. In things like robotics, you'll have similar technician training requirements, and anticipating those kinds of needs will be helpful. In fact, I would suggest that if you had the opportunity to talk to Transwestern about the things that they're thinking about for the other kinds of related users that they could attract as tenants are on the minds of most landlords around the country right now. The convergence between heavy tech users and heavy biotech users, what you might call deep tech, 9 or 10 related areas of really heavy sunk technology. It's good for any community to think this way because those are all the kinds of users that stay for a long time and they're not fly-by-night. These are not software enterprises that could be gone the next day. They tend to be heavily invested in where they are and to stay and last for a long time. So when Transwestern comes to you and says they're thinking about other types of related uses, it's a conversation that you should explore and maybe even ask the expert about things that he's seeing in robotics and automation.
And I think what you're bringing up is it's something that a lot of times we think like very linear, but if you look at South San Francisco, even just right there off the bridge, like that was nothing just a few decades ago. Yeah. And now it's an extremely robust system surrounding between health and science, and then all the other quality of life things that people like to do. I don't know why they go to Giants games, but they do. So I'm just mad the A's left. So, but I think so here in Vacaville, like Life Space Labs and other incubator space type facilities that provide those support services to foster that creativity and put that into something sustainable through the innovation is really fundamental towards continuing to diversify, because all those things go hand in hand. Right. What good is healthcare and the high cost of healthcare that we have if we don't have quality medications to support the quality of health that we receive through that.
That's right.
Along those lines, I have to ask, so like the figures, I just want to clarify, are those adjusted for inflation when you were talking about the amount of investments that are going to this particular field?
You mean like the $500 billion in announcements?
Yeah, we're saying that it's increasing investments of late. Is that adjusted? Is that because of just due to inflationary rates, or has that been adjusted for inflation, that there's actually more capital?
I don't think there's a long-term enough window in that to adjust. So I think that's real dollars. Okay. The $500 billion, for example, is real dollars, 2025 dollars.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah. So,
and along those lines, like one of the biggest concerns, I just had very concerning conversations this last couple of weeks regarding questions about whether financial aid, what that supports for different professions, and that's coming from national financial aid. So, nurses, anything to do, with whatever science that aren't on a defined list. Yep. Tariffs, immigration enforcement, particularly in California, particularly being a diverse area. How is that impacting our California's ability to be competitive in this region compared to perhaps other states or other countries?
I don't think we've seen enough to know how it's impacting California's ability to grow in life sciences specifically. So the window that we're in has been too short to say that it's moved the needle one way or another. I would say that the reputation that California has as a leading producer of life sciences talent hasn't really been hit by this. And so the sort of leadership role that California has in biotech is relatively on track. It hasn't really been disrupted. And I think because we still see things like CRISPR emanate from here, we've maintained that kind of global leadership position. I think, medium range, nothing is promised to anyone, but we haven't really seen, a major change. I would say, though, that the talent question is something to keep a close eye on. I would actually say it's a strength that you have a disruption to the potential employee pool by things like automation if you have areas of very high technical demand like biomanufacturing or robotics where you've got an opportunity to be makers. That's an equation that there's no equilibrium here. We got a long way to equilibrium. That's going to take 20 or 30 years to get hammered out. But if you do have, some combination of metal bending, tinkerers, that type of person is going to be very useful. Welders, and so the story's not been written yet.
Yeah.
So I think it's a long way to go.
It's an interesting one because, like most students, so a lot of students are deeply concerned about how they're going to afford to pursue an education. So there's already, we already see a drop in CSU enrollment across the state. UC seem to be okay, and they're tapping into more theory-based. So that's going to be, their UC system is training for folks to go to grad school. Yeah. So I interpret that as more debt. So in one way, community colleges are more equipped and ready to handle those skill sets to support the workforce. But on the other hand, the question still comes up, what value does that bring, and the concern about whether or not people can afford to be skilled to enter that workforce. And at some point, when there's a lot of uncertainty of where funding once came through federal funding, if it's not coming through private industry, it's going to be a pretty big challenge to see how people can develop.
I'm really glad you raised that point. If you talk to employers that have long-run positions that have remained open, you talk to an employer in life sciences that has a position that's been open for 400 days, for example, that tends to be long enough for them to give up. One thing that you arrive at with employers in biotech that have been through that is that they make a decision to build the person rather than wait for them to come along with the degree. In other words, the degree isn't being made to produce the person that they were seeking, so that they've got to co-invest. And that's why I think the stackable certificate thing has a long runway ahead in a very positive direction, because employers that find that kind of acute need tend to get more vested in participating and partnering. And so we do see employers that have interest in continuing a couple aspects of the RAMP program, which is, I think, why we see evidence here that there's some ownership of the issue.
When you see them, please direct them to Solano College as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Wiley.
Thank you for the information. I have a question also about one of the visuals, the one on pipeline surges, if you can go back to that. On most of these, it showed what the key was, and I was trying to figure out what the key on the pipeline surges was, because the bars look like they have 3 different colors, and I wasn't sure if that was the preclinical and the other thing. So like those 3 colors of green. So what are, there's at the bottom, I see the key, because that did show before. Preclinical, clinic, okay, that's what I was thinking based on those numbers, but I wasn't sure. So, okay.
Yeah, so there's a rule of thumb in the industry that it takes 10,000 compounds to get to one drug approvable. And so the basic funnel is you go through a lot of discovery. It's one of the things that makes the industry so expensive. A lot of discovery to get to one potential product. One of the things that has changed in this generation is the application of computing power. And so we see AI most useful in biotech so far in the discovery engine, because you can apply models to it much more quickly than in other areas of the industry. So you can't really replace a clinical trial. The FDA is trying to make that cheaper and faster, but one thing you can do is apply lots of models for bioactivity, potential toxicity issues earlier, the preclinical things you would have been working on, for a lot more compounds a lot quicker. So that's helping increase the pipeline.
Okay. And I'll just say, I hope that the way we're looking at vaccines on a national level won't affect these kind of things too, because medicine needs to go forward scientifically, and that's how we need to make strides ahead.
I agree. I think the cell and gene therapy space is a very refreshing example that I think we've dealt with real challenges to that part of the industry from 30 years ago, where we hadn't figured out how to adapt it to human use, and it sometimes takes a while. So maybe I'm biased, but I stay optimistic because of things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Freemel.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to go back up to the 30 to 50,000 foot range. And,
yes, sir.
So I know that we've talked about power, we've talked about water, and I've heard it said from, through PG&E, from PG&E, roughly, I mean, just in a very loose, that they can provide the power. That, as you said, there's things in the pipeline right now for 2027. So, but from 30 to 50,000 feet, what do you see that we need? And maybe one of your colleagues can answer this. What do we need to do to be prepared for this? I mean, because there's so many things involved, like, wastewater. Do we have the capacity to, and I know this is probably a question for our own within, I'm just thinking about ways to prepare for this and things that that companies are going to look at our capabilities, our capacities, water flowing in, water flowing out, power coming in, product going out. So from 30 to 50,000 feet, what can we do to be really attractive?
Yeah, I'm going to...
Because my big thing is creating great jobs.
Yes, sir. And I do think it's answerable. I'm going to set up Don, though, and do a handoff in a second, because I would rather have Don take this grenade. You're welcome. On the way to Don, though, I would just say, I think for the most part, if you can find a way to turn this into a positive and be able to address where the next 5 to 10 megawatts will come from, you're going to have a bigger challenge punching California's reputation problem. And so if you can answer that and turn it into maybe a bit of a campaign or some storytelling, that will help you get through that, because the reputation that California has, I think, is worse than the reality. We've seen it. We've got massive developments happening. We've got big flagship branded companies making $5 billion investments on the peninsula. It's improving. And so I think that part of the story is lost sometimes. And I think we just need to find new ways to maybe tell it. And I think if we could say 5 or 10 megawatts is around the corner in 2027, we'd be able to add that to the story.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Freemel. So when we developed the strategy in 2020 and launched in 2020, those infrastructure needs were already addressed. So our Public Works Department, our Utilities Department were a part of the process. So we do know that we have water, wastewater capacity, and electrical power, and even broadband in the area where these companies are looking to develop. So as far as public infrastructure is concerned, we're in good shape. Working with PG&E early on, we were able to provide them with the power requirements of the 4 companies that are looking to develop in the Vacaville Parkway. They provided them with estimates of what their power constraints, what their power usage would be, and PG&E did confirm with us that we did have that power at the Vacaville substation. So infrastructure is not our issue. As Matt had said, it's really going to be overcoming to attract additional companies. It's going to be overcoming the reputation that California is an expensive place to do business. And I would like to address that just for a moment. I know Vice Mayor Chapman, you had mentioned that as well. If we look at the life science clusters around the United States, the major clusters, Philadelphia, Boston, their cost of living and their general cost of doing business is no less than that of California. So some of that rhetoric around California being too expensive doesn't cut across the board in every industry. The life science industry is expensive in general, and those markets are on par with our market.
I'm willing to be hyperbolic about this too, Don. I would say when pharma is looking around the world for a place to put an advanced facility like this, the relative cost of doing business in a place like Boston or California doesn't scare them. You'd find some of those investments going to the most expensive potential places. So that really hasn't been a detractor for these kinds of manufacturing investments most of the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you. There may be more questions, but in sequence of this, I'd like to continue to move this on. But your information is very valuable and appreciate your knowledge tonight.
We'll now ask Lance Hastings, CEO of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, to bring us up to date on where we are as far as advanced manufacturing in the United States and hopefully here in California as well. Lance Hastings.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, but can I take a trip down memory lane for just a moment? 1972, Helen Parse moved to 159 Carlsbad Circle in Leisure Town. I spent a lot of my youth in this city visiting her and enjoying the town and recognizing at that time it had been a way station for people on their way from the Bay Area to somewhere else, but now Vacaville is a station in and of its own right. So every time I drive through the community, I'm reminded of those days riding the train at the Nut Tree as a kid, that when you are focused and advanced on a mission, you can accomplish it, and it's been done here, and it's been in the life sciences space. So congratulations for that, to be heralded. Between Solano County and San Diego area, California is recognized as a leader, not only in the development of products, but the manufacturing of products. What we don't want to have happen at the Manufacturers Association is to develop things here and then manufacture them elsewhere, because then we lose that value add. And I think Solano County right now is sitting on a juggernaut of potential and possibilities that clear that you are embracing, but we need to keep that momentum going because it doesn't happen by itself. So kudos to you for focusing on that as a city council and then the county writ large on really what the future can look like here. And when you do have that competitive advantage like you clearly have, drive a train through it. Don't give up. Yes, getting power is difficult for home building and for manufacturing. Don't give up. Work with the utility, open those relationships a little bit farther and quicker so that you can have that assurance that it's not a 7-year plan, but it's a next year plan. And I think when we're all working on that same objective, we're going to get there, and we're going to get in great order. Just this morning, I received a report from the UCLA Economic School that California is, in fact, as we all know, leading in advanced manufacturing. But what is that? It sounds really cool. Anything that's advanced sounds awesome. But what it isn't is really important to know. It's not the end all and be all for the rest of manufacturing, because when you think about it, manufacturers, we make everything, literally everything. Some things are in computer chips and some things are made with emissions, unfortunately, part of the process. It's a balancing act between making things. California has the largest number of manufacturers in terms of firms, the largest number of employees, 1.3 million, and our economic output is measured in the 300 billion range. So literally manufacturing is the key and the cornerstone to the state's economy, and one could argue even the national economy. Further, California's geographic location is perfect. So if I was going to drop a place, where would the best manufacturing sector be in the world? It would be here. We have access through our ports in Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Oakland to the entirety of the world's trading partners, primarily Asia because of our proximity. But those ports allow us to bring in and put out materials, uniquely situated. Our elongated footprint from north to south, perfect. It's not very wide, but it certainly is very long. And the key part to all of it is the 40 million people that live here. That's why we're doing so well. We can pull from a workforce that is ready, trained, eager. And a lot of those folks, you recall, came to California after World War II to set up the aerospace sector, which is in Southern California, and now the biotech and advanced manufacturing around the state. Even in this county, there are projects and proposals that are really going to drive that home. And if we need to call it advanced manufacturing to get things moving, let's do that. But at the end of the day, it's making things that people want and or need that separates the manufacturing sector from others. So I think what we have here is wonderful. Keep driving through that, focus on your strengths, which is that area. And one could argue in Solano County, some of the strengths are beer. I came from the beer sector, so I have an affinity for making of beer. And the other things, like Jelly Belly, great example. This area has such promise, and it's no longer the waste, like I mentioned earlier. It is a station. So embrace that. I was asking the same question about that pie chart. I'm like, what is that big area? I think it's Vacaville, but I don't know for sure. But it is. So that's the opportunity that's before you all. I usually mention in presentations that manufacturing in California is good, not great. And I say that because of the potential that we have. And I don't want to rest on any laurels. Yes, we are the #1 manufacturing state, but we don't have a right to that. And we have to keep working and keep hanging on to that because it's a very special promise. And each of you in your districts and county supervisors and state officials, the best job in your district is a manufacturing job, bar none. So the more manufacturing jobs you have in your districts, the better off we are all going to be because the output and the opportunity that those workers have. And I'll leave you with this one observation. I went to an education summit last year, and in the course of conversation, it was revealed, very surprising to me, that most 18-year-old graduates from high school don't go to a 4-year university in California. I was shocked. With all of the time and attention and resource that is pointed in that direction and not having that result, I got more concerned about the most. If most don't, what are we going to do for them? And the best thing we can do is offer them a path to a future they can be productive for themselves and their community and their families, and that's a manufacturing job. And I'm glad that it was mentioned earlier about the community colleges. The community college will bear out over history to be the catalyst for that happening. Not the high school so much like they used to be in the 50s and 60s, and certainly not the 4-year universities, although we do need engineers and accountants and lawyers, et cetera, in the manufacturing sector. But we need that future workforce. And right now, what keeps manufacturers up at night isn't so much what does the future workforce look like, it's where are they going to come from? Because the manufacturing sector from the 1980s to the early 2000s, people would hold their jobs for 40 years before they would retire from either the same place or certainly the same sector. And right now, the churn with their retirements coming and a workforce that wants to work 3 to 5 years maybe somewhere, that's not really what we've been built upon, and we need to adapt as manufacturers. But it's that community college experience, that credential, that certificate really is a passport for an economic future and prosperity. So keep up the great work, keep supporting the local institutions, keep working with the utility. We have a direct engagement opportunity with PG&E, so if you ever want a third party to help with that, happy to pick up the phone and call Patty Poppy, who came and spoke at our recent annual meeting. Happy to do that, happy to be helpful. Appreciate the opportunity to provide some additional context. I remain bullish on the future. It's not without its challenges, but water, power, and workforce, those are the 3 key ingredients that we all need. So let's stay focused on that and do the best that we can.
Yeah, thank you. And based upon the other questions that you've already heard us discussing, obviously this council seems to have a lot more knowledge and experience because of our history in what we would call the biotech world. One of the things that I think we have seen, and to Councilmember Fremont's point, is looking for good jobs. And it really does seem to be in manufacturing, right? When you can do that. You said Southern California is certainly in the defense space, but what is interesting is as we sit right here with our history, with Travis Air Force Base, which is interesting because there's nothing around. And I've heard from a lot of people, it says, you are prime in this area, whether it's our city to Fairfield, to Vallejo, to any city in the region, to really be that catalyst to a boom in manufacturing. It's right here, the workforce, and I know, Don, maybe you can speak to it. You've had the opportunity, even whether it's controversial or not, when you look at the potential single manufacturing opportunity in Solano County, which would, let's say, a shipyard. You start speaking of numbers, and I'm sure, sir, you would look at, if you could bring on 10,000 jobs, what that would do to all of our cities. And so just your thoughts based upon the questions and any other final thoughts you have.
I mean, those would be material kind of jobs, and I'll use the Tesla example just as an example. 20,000 workers go there into Fremont every day to work. If you took that out of the Alameda County economy, it would be material. A lot of debate about that whole situation, but the fact they're making cars, they're well paid, that's really what we'd like to see. And this area is starting to have that happen more than the normal county in California. And I think Solano County is especially sitting on a very bright future. And due to the decision-making and foresight that this council is having, you could be part of that. But Solano County, it's like that old movie, I forget which one it was, but they said plastics, it's the future. Solano County is the future for manufacturing. It's the future right here, and we're living it right now. Yes, I work primarily in Sacramento, but I drive through this area all the time, and I'm proud every time I through. So please keep up the good work, and we'll be a welcome partner for you in all of the pursuits.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Rico.
Now we have Chris Rico, who is our CEO and president of the Solano County Economic Development Corporation.
Hi, good to see you guys, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, council members. Several of you, I think, were at our manufacturing breakfast that we had in a very cold warehouse. I've heard that from a bunch of people, so next time we'll let people know to bring a jacket. I got permission from JLL to actually use the presentation that Greg Matter shared as a basis for our conversation today, just to dive a little bit more into those slides. And I had some time with the analysts today to ask some questions about some of the stuff. But before that, first what I want to say is I'm not paying Matt Gardner to be my publicist. Apparently he's doing that for free. I was the Director of Innovation of Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. I also was a department of one. I always thought it was funny that I was meant to direct innovation for the 15th largest economy on the planet by myself. What I did was build a massive innovation festival called Innovate LA, because I was like, okay, what can I do to catalyze innovation in this region? And for me, back to what he said before, was a lot of storytelling, right? And that's really, LA is different from Silicon Valley. It's food, it's art, it's fashion, it's civic and social innovation. At that point, we had 3 Hyperloop companies. You know, there were jets, rockets being launched. It was an exciting place to be, and obviously Hollywood and all the things around that. This is a really exciting place to be, and I didn't know that when I took this job. And I know it's controversial, but I think California Forever is the best thing that's going to ever have happened to Solano County. They have brought a spotlight here. They have brought investment here, the kind of investment that you could only dream of having. The biggest investors on the planet want to manufacture things in Solano County. We're in a really rapid transition into artificial intelligence taking a lot of people's jobs. There's been massive layoffs from big tech companies like 10,000, 15,000. Those jobs aren't coming back. So we're really well positioned to have our renaissance here in Solano County to be this place where the technology that's developed down in the South Bay, they want to build it over here. I know I'm under NDA, but it was in the press. So Saronic, who's talking about building boats in Collinsville, that's looking very likely. We're in negotiations with the state and the county right now about that. That's massive. The kind of infrastructure that's going to bring. Because California Forever brought this conversation about shipbuilding to our region, we have Saab and Hanwha, who are big multinational shipbuilders, who want to come to Vallejo and Benicia, and we're working right now with the governor's office and their consulates to organize a visit. That's going to benefit all of us. And by the way, just the context of this conversation, in 2020, when you guys started betting on life science, there were certain things happening. Things changed. Were we talking about shipbuilding 6 months ago? No, we weren't. But suddenly, it's the only thing that we're talking about. So I think one of the things that you guys should take away from that is we do need to have fallbacks. But I think more than anything, we need to be nimble. And we need to be able to actually look at what's coming towards us and make decisions in real time about that, right? So shipbuilding is going to benefit all of us if any of those things happen. On the workforce front, as far as training is concerned, you went to Virginia, right? Did you go to a bunch of you guys went.
Talking about to Select USA?
No. So maybe you didn't go, but a handful of local leaders went to Virginia to look at this $250 million facility where they're training.
It was Texas.
Oh, it was Texas. No, you went to for Saronic, but no, there was a different trip. There's a $250 million investment that's likely to come to Solano County to train people into shipbuilding, and those will be paid for. The students who go into that program don't have to pay a dime. And that, back to what Matt was saying about some of these companies get to the point where they're like, okay, we have to train our own workforce. If shipbuilding comes to Solano County, some of that's going to start happening too, right? But, he brought up before about this generation changing jobs every 5 years. I think that's all the more reason why community college with stackable certificates, where if you know how to work with advanced machinery to make a thing, you can go from electric batteries to wind turbines to ships, right? It's the skills that they have to make. It's one of the reasons why I think the Carpenters Union is kind of smart to be bucking some of the other traditional unions, and I don't know if this is being recorded or I'm probably going to get flack for this, but like Factory OS on Mare Island, right? They make modular housing. The carpenters had a deal and said, look, we'll make less money when we come to that factory every day than if we go across the bridge to work on a project, but we get to go to the same place every day. And a lot of those folks bought houses in Vallejo, and they said, and we're doing all the things. They're doing the pipe fitting, they're doing the electrical. If you know people who know how to make things, they know how to do all those things. So I say that because in the future, I feel like we need to all be more nimble. We need to train people how to be makers who know how to do things. I think Solano County has a real opportunity. I do want to go into these slides a little bit. So Don, if you could go forward with that. So we get a lot of R&D and we get a little bit of pilot line manufacturing. What we don't get is the full-scale production. If you look in the investments that have happened in recent years, when the Inflation Reduction Act was actually happening and investments were being made in electric cars and electric batteries, if you paid attention, those things were going to Mississippi and they were going to Georgia and they were going to all these other states. They were not coming to California. So when JLL put this work together for California Forever, but made this presentation, they were saying, look, there is this opportunity here where you guys are doing all the R&D and you're doing some of this pilot line production. Why not take it to the next step and be building stuff here? I had the good fortune of moderating a panel when you guys did Gene Acres. And they had all the Genentech folks on stage. Didn't you guys go to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was really cool because some of those people hadn't seen each other for like decades and they were all on stage together. And you got to hear the why. Why did they come to Vacaville? Because they could drive from the South Bay and they were innovating and iterating and innovating, and they needed to have access to the place that they could drive to. So geographically, it ended up here for that reason. It's the same reason why the investors in Saronic want them to build their ships here in Collinsville, because they live in the South Bay, right? I don't know if you guys paid attention, but Hadrian, it's another big defense contractor, state of California, I wouldn't say bent the rules, but like they were a lot more accommodating for like a Cal Competes grant for them than they normally would be. We're seeing CEQA reform. Like there's things changing at the state level where they recognize that we need to do things differently if we're going to attract these kinds of companies. So I think I'm optimistic about that. I share Lance's optimism about that. This is the 80,000 people that commute out of Solano County every day to go to work in other places. It's pretty consistent, right? It hasn't changed very much. The thing that's changed, the tan line, is what percent of all Solano residents does that represent? And that's gotten higher and higher, right? So that's a workforce that's leaving that we can capture and bring back here. And I can tell you those people would much rather work close to home. During the pandemic, when people got to work from home, we heard a lot of people say like, oh, I could go to my kid's soccer game. To the parent-teacher night, things that normally I'm in traffic on the 80 and I couldn't go to. So those people would love to work closer to home. Next slide, please. So this was an analysis of our existing labor pool as it pertains to manufacturing. The key number on this one is if you look at the adjacent industrial, 10,215 employees. The other lines are pretty specified, but that 10,000 number that's the opportunity of people that are currently going and taking their skills and assets and making money in other counties that could be enriching Solano County. Next slide, please. So I don't know if it cost you guys when you guys were at the breakfast, but interestingly, because we have a high unemployment rate, we're really attractive to companies that want to locate here. Those companies that are those states that are competing with us right now for Saronic, for instance, Alabama, Texas, they don't have the labor pool. Like they're saturated. They can't provide the labor that's needed. And that's the number one concern for these companies is like, do you actually have the people who can build the thing? We're in this nice sweet spot, as it was explained to me by their analysts, of like 5%, it's not enough to scare anybody away, like, oh, your unemployment is out of control. It's like, oh, you actually have talent that we could train to do the job. It's a good thing, as it turns out. Next slide. And then this is just, if you look at the Bay Area broadly, these advanced aerospace and defense, energy, advanced transportation, robotics, and industrial automation and build tech are all here. There are clusters, there are ecosystems that we are adjacent to. If you look at what California Forever is proposing to do with this foundry, this industrial zone that they want to build, these are the ones, not coincidentally, that they're focusing on because this is where the opportunity is. And when you guys look beyond bio for other things that you might be doing, these are the things that you should be looking towards as the possibilities as well. And again, I go back to, you're training young people how to work with advanced machinery and do things. Those are great skills that could allow them to pivot into working with composites, working on an aerospace project, working on a defense product. And I think we should have those conversations with our young people about, get them conditioned to the idea like, hey, we're looking at how you guys want to live your lives, which is a little bit different than when people used to have 40 years and they would get a watch or a clock or something, right? You're moving around, so let's talk about that. Why don't we start training you to have these kinds of skills so that you can be ready for whatever opportunity comes your way? And again, I think a place like Solano is uniquely positioned for that, and because of Solano Community College. And even with that, though, when you go to Doug Bean, who runs the manufacturing program in Fairfield, has an industry night, and what you hear from everybody is that they still have a hard time finding people to do these manufacturing jobs, the ones that are already here, right? So I think we need to, if there's one thing that we can be doing, I think, to prepare ourselves is really investing in career technical education, really empowering these young people. And when I went to high school, we were all sold on this, like you had to go to four-year college or you were not worth as much as other people, right? You were on college prep, track, or you were looked down on. If you were in wood shop or if you were in auto shop, you were not supported. And I think we did a lot of people a disservice with that. And I think we need to shift the way that we talk about those things. I mean, I own a house now. Have you guys paid a plumber lately? Have you paid an electrician lately? Like, these folks make good money, right? So I think that it's important that we focus on the talent pipeline too and how we get those folks into these jobs. And then lastly, again, we're all gonna be benefiting from the amount of resources that California Forever is going to invest in getting these companies to come here. It will be the tide that rises all boats. There will be companies that are all part of those clusters that are supply chain that are going to need to domicile in areas around here. It's probably going to also help Contra Costa County and Alameda County too, right? It's going to be a whole ecosystem that's going to arise. The shipyard opportunity, the land is in Solano County. The opportunity is for the whole region. And as we contemplate building out a shipbuilding ecosystem, we just submitted a preliminary application to the state of California for our organization to build out kind of the spine around a maritime industrial zone. Very fortuitously, there's a great guy leading Cal Poly, what is now called Cal Poly Maritime in Vallejo now. That is a really important asset in this region. It's something that's kind of been laying dormant for a long time, and now that there's this new interest in shipbuilding, all of a sudden Cal Poly Maritime is very much a pivotal asset. And then the other thing that we've proposed is building out a maritime tech incubator on Mare Island. So we have an application into the state. We will most likely be asked to advance into like a full application. I say all that just because this stuff is all happening at the same time, and it's really exciting, and it's exciting for Vacaville and Dixon and Rio Vista and Vallejo, even if the actual thing maybe isn't here. All the things that support that will be here, and you folks that live here will go take those new jobs too.
Well, I really, okay, that's the end of the presentation, right?
Apparently.
No more slides? I just didn't know if there was.
No, and again, not my presentation, but I wanted to share that with you.
Well, I think most of us who went to that presentation, we heard you facilitate the discussion, and obviously there was a lot of robust discussion about the workforce, the industries, manufacturing, and I think that we all can have a different or differing views on what we want. But one thing that is important is, as a city, is we focus on the opportunity.
That's right.
And the opportunity is all politics aside as far as how people feel. When you're talking about 10,000 jobs, 20,000 jobs, we're talking about cities right now that are deficit spending. We're talking about a county that is also deficit spending.
Yeah.
this is a one-of-one opportunity, and this is just the beginning of advanced manufacturing pipeline. And we haven't even talked about ag tech. There's so many opportunities because of the workforce. You're absolutely right. Is there anything from your perspective that would, we talk about the region, now let's talk about the city of Vacaville.
Yeah.
The way I see it is we're an existing city with infrastructure and facilities and buildings and workforce. You're the expert. What would you recommend us do?
So at your direction and the direction of the board, I mean, I think power is critical, right? I think if you want to be ahead of your peers in terms of competitive advantage, like do everything that you can to bring cheaper, renewable, reliable power to Vacaville. And I think honestly, as a county, and I've said this, we should be looking at municipal power. And I know I probably will get penalized by PG&E. They've lowered their membership rate at my organization every time I speak up. But it's literally the most important variable in all of this is, do you have power? Can we get it quickly? You know, I think we talked about this at the breakfast. The dirty secret that most people don't talk about is a lot of companies are putting up diesel generators just to get going in California right now. So we have all these lofty, well-intended goals around the environment, but then it's leading to people having to put diesel generators up to get their factory going. And one of the things that came out of that conversation that we had with PG&E and the PUC, and I think, were you on that call too, right? They admitted that they were willing to do something for the first time that they had never been willing to do before, which was allow companies to build their own energy infrastructure and then PG&E would reimburse them. I think we need to start exploring all of those things, and you just need to have a playbook specifically around, regardless of whether PG&E can get you this power or not, we have this industrial developer and we have the financing mechanism to get you the power that you need, and we'll get reimbursed by PG&E, but we're not going to let them hold us back when they say, oh, by the way, it's going to take us 4 years to get power. The other thing is a lot of data centers are sniffing around Solano County and Contra Costa. Now, reflexively, when they've called me, I was like, we don't want that. Like, no one here wants your data center. It takes up valuable land, there's no jobs, it uses a ton of water and power that we are already missing. But when, and you know, this is all about AI, right? So when enough of them called me, I was like, look, if you all know that you need to be here in our geography and Eastern Contra Costa because of latency, right? Like the distance from wherever the company is, there is a geographic imperative around that. Help us build our own utility. Like, if you guys can bring the capital and help us build our own power so that we can go all the other things that we need, I bet there's some city councils that would cut some deals with you to have one data center in their city because it means that they have the power necessary to attract the advanced manufacturing. You know, Lance knows this, Matt knows this, like, even the fact that SMUD is 20% cheaper than PG&E, like, they eat our lunch day. Nevada, 9 cents per kilowatt hour when we're 35. Like, people don't come here if they don't have to. If they can go, I mean, that's, by the way, it's why the Tesla went to Fremont, because there was a Toyota factory there. Their gigafactory is in Nevada. A lot of these data centers are going to Nevada too because of the power. I say that, and none of the states have the power thing figured out. I mean, this is a national problem, but we could have a competitive advantage over the other states if we actually, you know, had some grown-up conversations about the fact that the way that we're doing things in the state right now isn't working. Like, based on results, like, it's working. This legacy system of this, you know, protected monopoly from the 20th century, like, it's not going to solve the problem. So I don't know if we have the political will around here to go after something like that. I mean, I know very famously Davis and Yolo County tried to break away from PG&E. That was a different era. They lost, but I think PG&E had a lot more capital and energy at that point to fight that. I don't think that's the case right now. And I don't think we should let that stop us. And you brought up Travis. I mean, Travis has power needs that we're exploring right now through some federal grants. Let's put Travis at the center of the conversation, and then let's all benefit from however we come together to solve that by bringing more cheaper renewable power. And I can tell you, if the people lived here, if you could cut their power bills by 30%, we would all be heroes. So that's what I would focus on, honestly, is the thing, can we become power rich in a way that we have that asset to compete against other places with?
I appreciate that, and this really does need to spark bigger conversations, and there's a lot of things that really, this is not the time and place for, to expand and discuss on some meetings and understandings that are out there on energy, on how to be resilient for the base, how to be looking forward, how to do things big and bold. And sometimes it's scary and sometimes it feels threatening. But the reality is when jobs are possible and the quality of life can be improved, the truth is, a year ago I wrote an article on the very issue of wouldn't it be better if we could reduce our power costs, and that become the benefit for every employer and every resident in the city of Vacaville.
Yeah.
And it can be.
So again, with board direction, we have our annual breakfast coming up in a couple months. We're going to pick a date soon. And we're going to have an extended breakfast, and we're just going to focus on the power conversation. But we're also going to talk about battery storage. I know that's really contentious in these community conversations, and rightfully so. I get why people are sort of wanting to have those things closer to their homes where their families are, and it's their biggest asset. But we also need those things, right? We need it for grid resiliency. We need it so that we can use renewable forms of power. So we can't shy away from those conversations. We're going to take those conversations head on. And we'll talk about all those things together. So it'll probably be like a 2 to 3 hour event, but power is the most important consideration in all these things. So we're just going to have that conversation. And PG&E will be there too.
Councilmember Silva.
Just totally agree on the getting off the grid, if I could say it in that form. There's a lot of public support and interest in what that will look like. And actually, and I were just talking about that earlier. But I think, so along those lines, and we're talking about advanced manufacturing, it's not clear to me if that was clearly defined, other than like if it fits manufacturing, make it fit advanced manufacturing to access that, those benefits. But when we're usually, whether it's biomanufacturing, advanced manufacturing, again, this not only does it require more energy and the water to sustain it, there's consequences to all of that type of infrastructure. But what about fiber optic lines? We've talked a lot about that from council and what that looks like in developing different plans.
Actually, and maybe we'll have, I'm not probably right for the power conversation. So Stu, who's the GIS planner for the county, has been leading the broadband efforts, and he really is the person with the knowledge around that. I would defer to him if you have questions, and I'm happy to connect you to him. Really not.
So I think it's, so when we talk about infrastructure and moving forward, like I think that's a key component to it, rather than looking at where things have been.
And listen, the other thing is how do we work together as a county? And I hope that we're heading in that direction, that we're all starting to collaborate more and realize that we can create something where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Certainly Fairfield and Vacaville already know that, like, it's great if Fairfield gets an advanced manufacturing facility. It's great if Vacaville gets an advanced manufacturing facility. We all benefit from those things. Conversely, we're going to see what happens when Valero closes. And we're all going to feel that, whether you're in Benicia or not, because it's not just the 400 jobs that are on the location. It's a total of 1,200 jobs that are all related to that. We may be able to snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat there, because as it turns out, when shipbuilders are coming to look, that location, which has 50 megawatts of power generation, and they use 1 billion gallons of water a year, when you go to industrial developers and say, hey, we have this site that has a port and it has these things, that's attractive. So we'll see how quickly we can turn that around, but it's going to hurt us for a while, right? And, we all felt it when Mare Island shut down. Obviously Vallejo's taken the brunt of it, but our fortunes rise and fall together. So to the extent that we can work together on these big issues, I'm going to keep saying it out loud, and I hope we come together and work on power together as a county and actually do something bold and innovative that distinguishes us from other places. If you look at our geography, how many days a year is it sunny here? Like 300? And obviously Travis is here because of wind, right? We have all these ridge lines here where we could do gravity storage with water. Like, we have all of these resources. We're power rich as a county. We're relatively water rich. I know the state's been trying to take our water, but as it stands, we're relatively water rich. So we're pretty well positioned in a lot of ways to benefit from these things. I just think we need to work together. And already Slater and I and some of the economic development folks in Fairfield have been talking. You guys may know we're doing this priority production area grant from MTCA bag looking at our industrial lands. The original intention when the Inflation Reduction Act was enacted and then the infrastructure bill, we were like, oh, we need to get ready for all this infrastructure money that's going to be coming down from the federal government. That's not happening right now. So it's more about, okay, how are we prepared to build the infrastructure that we may need to figure out how to finance? How are we prepared to have microgrids and things that might make these things possible? That's what we were all focused on. We were at STA earlier today collectively working on that. So it's good to see everyone coming together. The planners do an amazing job getting together. They've been doing that for a while. I think the more that we all, there's no us versus them in the county versus cities. I keep saying this. It's just us. There's just a big us here. Like the more that we're all working on this stuff, it's more likely to happen, and we're all more likely to benefit from it.
So just two more quick points. One, you brought up something, so you added a point to me, but you mentioned that we're water rich. I would like to suggest that we're water balanced.
Okay.
Relative
to some other places, we might be water rich, but yes.
We want to keep it balanced.
Yes, okay, balanced, sure.
So the second point, you mentioned that there's be $250 million invested in training. I think that's a real key thing, because one of the concerns that I hear is like, oh, this is going to bring jobs. I've not seen a tangible program in how we're going to address that.
Yeah.
How do we systemically address that, particularly when we keep hearing from employers that, hey, we need more employees. We need more employees. If we got these, so.
Right, who's paying for the programs?
Yeah, well, just where is that clear pathway, rather than saying, oh, we got community college? Because the challenge is, and that's where many people draw concern, what systems can we put in place to where when we say there's going to be $10,000 or make these claims that there's going to be 10,000 jobs, that those jobs are actually going to be more local rather than bringing folks from outside.
Right.
And if they're creating these having these great wages, not displacing our current residences who are trying to make it. So.
Yeah, I mean, listen, from the moment, right, that it was revealed who California Forever was in the Wall Street Journal, I was lucky enough to get an op-ed published in the Chronicle, and the thesis statement then is the same thing that I say now, like, don't go over us, go through us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the line that a lot of us are holding, is like, we want to be in partnership with you if you're going to bring investment. We want to see it lift our people up. We want to make sure that our existing manufacturers aren't displaced. They're your suppliers, right? So fortunately, we have a really great guy now leading our business retention and expansion program. His name is Steve. If you guys haven't met him, he comes from Bosch and Tesla. He's just a super guy. Our focus right now is getting all of the manufacturers in Solano County around a table. That manufacturing breakfast that we had, like, we actually had manufacturers come to our breakfast. They don't usually come to our events because they're building things, right? They don't have time to go to a breakfast at the Hilton Garden Suites, but they came for that. And it was a good starting point. And a number of them said, like, we would like to be part of a manufacturer's roundtable. So that's work that we can be doing. On the workforce side, Dr. Butler and her peers in Contra Costa and Alameda are at the table with Corey from Cal Poly Vallejo, or Cal Poly Maritime. I don't know what it's called now, but they're already working in concert with the new Workforce Development Board director and the adult schools and CT and CE. Hopefully we do get the grant from the state through California Jobs First, because we'll be ahead and working on those things. But yeah, I welcome your voice in that, right? Like, we definitely want to make sure that it's our local people who are getting trained into those jobs, right? That's the way we want to win.
Don, did you have something you want to add?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to comment, first of all, for Councilmember Silva. We brought this chart up. Thank you, Matt, for reminding me of this. For a better definition of advanced manufacturing, if you look to the right where it says growth industries in the region, these are some of the industries that collectively are what we're calling advanced manufacturing. And to Chris's point about bringing investment within the community because of the work that California Forever is doing, Slater and I both have examples of how that is actually happening. Without using any names and violating the NDA, we are already in conversations with a jet engine company looking to acquire facilities here in Vacaville to produce supersonic engines. So the investment is already starting to materialize.
Yeah, and just to add to that, on that point about what California Forever means to Vacaville and to the region, putting aside your feelings about that project because of its, politicization that's happened, the fact that it has created so much interest around Solano County on a national, international level, that's what Don and I are experiencing firsthand. The example he just gave, this is a research and development company out of San Francisco that's looking for a production facility. You know, they're raising Series A and Series B capital from private sector and public sector, United, Lockheed Martin putting money into it. They became interested in Solano County because of everything they've been reading about California Forever. Well, California Forever is still years away. We have sites that are available now. So we are engaging on that front to be able to actively recruit those companies and those businesses to be able to come to Vacaville now and set up operations. So this is a fantastic opportunity from a collaborative standpoint to be working on this business attraction. And then to your question about how this ties into workforce development, on that same front, we've got an educational and training program that's specifically geared around aerospace and aerospace, shipbuilding, and aviation. And they've approached us because of their interest in California Forever and what they've heard about Solano County. Again, we have sites and facilities that are ready now, so we're actively engaging with them to recruit that training facility to come in, and it'll serve as a bedrock workforce development partner here in the county to be able to produce jobs and skilled talent that can go into these types of businesses as they site in Vacaville and grow in Vacaville. And this is just another example of fantastic collaboration at a county level, but using that sort of profile elevator from California Forever to be able to go out and actively recruit those companies to come in here now.
Profile elevator, like that.
I got that from you.
Well, no, I don't know, it's me.
I do appreciate that, and you know, thank you, Mr. Rico. There's more conversation to be had. You and I, and any one of us, can talk to you offline. And as a city, especially for Solano EDC, we truly do appreciate the collaboration and the leadership and the work to do. It does take courage, and sometimes there can be skepticism. But the truth is, I appreciate the work of our staff as well, even tonight, to be able to lean in. It's been 15 months ago since we got to this point. So I think that's been a benefit. So thank you.
Yeah, and reach out. I'm happy to meet with any of you guys anytime you want to talk about any of this stuff further.
Yes.
Mayor Carley, I would like to close our presentation with informing the council that next Wednesday will be our first opportunity with our new city manager to actually sit down and discuss strategy development. So that was one of the key reasons why we wanted to have these subject matter experts with us here tonight, to be able to inform you all on what are those emerging industries, what are the trends that we should be focusing on, and all of that information informs us on how to develop and recalibrate the strategies that we have. So thank you, Council, for indulging us, and thank you to our subject matter experts for providing the time.
And briefly, to our city attorney, or incoming city attorney.
Mayor, may we please take a brief recess to discuss a procedural matter before you conclude this item?
Absolutely. Before I conclude this item?
Yes, please.
Okay, before I do that, I want to just turn it to Councilmember Stockton, and then we'll take a recess.
All right, thank you for the presentation, for all of your time and effort that you put into this. I really appreciate how you ended, because my questions are like, yes, I want the region to win. I'm agnostic with a 400,000 person city, but optimistic about opportunities and open to opportunities to bring jobs via shipyard or anything else that's going to help our citizens here be able to afford to live here and thrive here. So, but I still want Vacaville to win, right? And so you kind of just hit on those things. And so I don't have too many questions on that, but I do appreciate you touching on that at the end, because the whole time I'm going, yeah, I want the region to win, but where's Vacaville's wins? And so those are going to be really important for us. Is, we've been optimistic about our biotech strategy. We've been optimistic about some of the advanced manufacturing, but I'll tell you, seeing a shovel go in the ground and buildings pop up, I mean, I want to see it happen. Like, I want to see it happen while I'm on council. or in the near future. I hope those things are out. I know staff is working diligently with everyone to try to make those things happen. I liked that you talked about power, water, and people, and I think there was a lot of conversation about people in regards to workforce. But I also want to really emphasize that as we move forward with some of this innovative technology in a variety of different fields, but certainly with power, and I know we're going to have a robust conversation coming up about that power, is that public safety has to be at the center of all of these decisions. We cannot sacrifice the safety of family, Vacaville families, or even our neighboring, county families and stuff next to some of these things that pose, have some risks, right? And so I know that we're going to have a bigger discussion about that, but I felt like it was appropriate to make sure that I voiced that, because as we move forward and look into some of this stuff, there are safer ways to do things that might be able to achieve some of those goals. I love hearing about power independence, or at least subsidizing power so that we can ensure that, businesses are more likely to come here. But I love hearing that we may be able to lower rates or ensure that power doesn't get shut off for some of the folks locally that depend on that for a variety of reasons. I think we have a lot of exciting things in the forefront here in Vacaville, tremendous opportunity. There's a lot of people working on this stuff, but I can't stress enough that I think we're at a point in time where families are hurting, the affordability factor with inflation and stuff, and they really are counting on us. I know you're working hard. If there are things that we can do, some of which you mentioned today, but I mean, in conversations or developing relationships that as a council, please ask us. I don't want companies going to Texas. I don't want companies going to Virginia. I want them to come here to Solano County and preferably in Vacaville. So I would just, encourage you that if there are ways that we can help, just please ask us. We got 100,000 people counting on us and their kids in the future, families that'll be here in Vacaville counting on us too. So thank you for the presentation. Those are my comments. I appreciate the comments from my colleagues as well, and just the vast amount of effort and energy and education that you've done on this topic, because it's apparent that you've put a lot of work into this. So thank you both, or all of you.
All right, before we close this item, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Good job. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up Vacaville. Yeah, absolutely. That was like, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
He passed.
All right, Vacaville, we're going to go ahead and reconvene. We're still on the existing item, and for point of clarification in legal consultation, this is a special meeting in which normally is only public comment at the front of a meeting. That's absolutely in the government code and normal. However, since this meeting also had added items, including consent and 2 business items, what is posted here, we're going to look at the public comment for each item. Even though it says not to, a special meeting usually wouldn't have an agenda the way this one does, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So before we close this item, I would like to open this item up for any public comment before we close it. So this is the current item that we've been talking about on economic development before we go on. And I see none, so thank you for,
Sorry before your thanks. Just one more quick comment. So just, we focus here on the large items like advanced manufacturing, biotechnology, biomanufacturing. I think a key component that a lot of times get lost within our community is the either direct or indirect benefit of that to our quote unquote small businesses. And so through all of this, can just reassure us that small businesses are absolutely the fabric and core of our community. Because, just in the economic development update, small businesses are still a part of this.
Absolutely. In the economic impact analysis that was in your council packets, if you read through that, we did give like a case study example of one of our real life science companies. We didn't reveal the name of the company, but we used all the data they provided to us. And you'll see where it demonstrates that from a top line supply chain company all the way down to the grocery store, to the credit union, what that economic impact will be for all of the businesses, large and small. So that is in the report.
Thank you.
And there was a tremendous amount of information to cover tonight. We wanted to make sure that there was enough room for our subject matter experts. But actually, my preamble, if you will, to my piece was about the small businesses and how they make up 99.8% of California's firms and nearly half the statewide workforce. They form the supply chain backbone for every advanced industry targeted in the strategies that we're looking at. Startups thrive in Vacaville due to affordability, flex and industrial space, availability and access to sub-regions and major regions, and strengthening the permitting, navigation, capital access, and shop local initiative helps build economic resilience citywide. So for me, that's sort of the nucleus of all of this. Even though we might be talking about, advanced manufacturing and, robotics and aerospace and defense, the common thread that ties all of this together is how to make sure that we're building resiliency and inclusion for our small businesses because they're the backbone of our economy.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate the presentation. This is a great update, and having a robust discussion, breaking it up, I think, is beneficial for all of us, and so really appreciate it. So thank you for the time and effort it took to put this together and for our special guests, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to item B, to our city clerk.
So this is consideration of activation thresholds for extreme weather warming and cooling centers. And our Assistant City Manager, Georgianne Megger-Smith, is here to give the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Carley, Vice Mayor Chapman, and members of the council. Quick background on this topic. The old Greyhound Bus Depot at 1040 Mason Street has served as a warming center since 2022 with your approval. City community centers have served as cooling centers in general and in addition to Solano County libraries. And the purpose of both is to provide safe temporary refuge during periods of extreme weather that present a threat to life. We're going to jump right in and look at some regional thresholds for warming centers. Ours are outlined in the council adopted emergency operations protocol in the extreme weather annex. There are no state mandated thresholds for when to activate a warming center, and not all jurisdictions have specific numeric triggers like ours, and some offer warming centers at all. To give you some perspective on what other agencies have as triggers, you can see I've listed here Fairfield, Vallejo, and Santa Rosa in addition to ours. You can see they're not too different from each other. Ours is 2 consecutive days at or below 32 degrees, factoring in wind chill and temperatures at or below 40 degrees with a heavy forecast of rain for 4 more consecutive hours. Fairfield's is pretty similar. Vallejo's, their trigger is 35 degrees at the 2 days, and then Santa Rosa's is actually 3 days. I thought it might be helpful to show you an estimate of how many nights the warming center would have been open if we activated several different triggers, and this data is based on historical weather information from the past 3 years, really looking at December, January, and February, which are the coldest months. The top row reflects our current trigger, and you may remember that we activated the warming center 5 nights in the 2023-24 winter season and 6 nights in the 24-25 season. Moving the triggers to 35 degrees results in a fairly significant increase of estimated activations, and at 40 degrees, the warming center would have been open about half the nights in those winter months. This table includes estimates of how many nights we would have hit the triggers when we add in rain along with the temperature thresholds. When you add rain into the mix, the number of estimated nights hitting the thresholds goes down significantly since we're not an overly rainy community. And with both rain and any measure of rain or, at the quarter-inch level. I've included some options here for your consideration, but you are not limited to these by any means. You can keep the current thresholds, you can modify them by adopting a higher or a lower temperature, or you can add or revise the rain requirements, or you can do a combination of any of these things. So the current trigger, as I mentioned before, is number 1, which is the hard freeze condition. Option 2, which is not really an option, just kind of gives you some things to think about, could be moving the trigger to 35 degrees. You could add National Weather Service advisory-based activations. And one of the things that we don't have that you might want to add is a discretionary activation for life safety that would authorize the city manager to activate the warming center when a combination of things might take place that present a substantial risk. Also, just going back to this one real quick, depending on actions you take, the one things that might happen would be we might need to come back with the budget augmentation at a future date should we need to do that. Moving on to cooling centers, Vacaville's current thresholds are based on the National Weather Service heat index. It's on this very small chart that takes into account both relative humidity and temperature. The trigger is 2 consecutive days in the danger category, which is the orange band, or 1 day in the extreme danger category, which is the red band. Many cities follow their county's lead on when to activate cooling centers, and many activate when the National Weather Service issues a heat risk level 3 warning or higher, which takes several factors into account. It's not really just a straight temperature trigger. Let's see. In 2024, we activated a cooling center on 21 days with an average of 12 users per day. The use of cooling centers is fairly fluid with people coming in and out. It's a little bit different than at the warming center. We have historically used city community centers as cooling centers because they're already staffed and open most days. I also want to point out that Solano County libraries also serve as cooling centers during regular business hours. And we have 2 in Vacaville that are both adjacent to community centers. If we looked at just the temperatures at different thresholds for 24 and 25, here's an estimate of how many days we would have hit those triggers. Here you can see I've got them at 105 degrees, 102 degrees, and at 90 degrees. You'll see that as you kind of lower the trigger, you're activating more days. At the 90-degree level, which I think the Homeless Roundtable is interested in that level, we'd be open 2 months of those really hot summer months. So I don't necessarily staff's not making a recommendation to you. The recommendation is really just that you receive the presentation and provide direction on the extreme weather warming and cooling center activation thresholds. This item aligns with several strategic plan goals, specifically ensuring public safety, protecting Vacaville's quality of life, and maintaining effective and efficient services. And I'm happy to answer any questions and take any comments.
Yeah, thank you for that. Council or Vice Mayor Chapman.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have 3 questions, I think. Okay, with the expense in operating the heating center, has there been, or have we ever had conversation with the medical facilities in regards to assisting us with our heating and cooling center? The reason I ask that, I'm fully aware that our unhoused or our homeless often patron the ER room when the conditions outside are not favorable. And I'm just thinking that the medical facilities may have an interest and may be willing to assist us with the expense. So I would just like for that to be looked into as a possible remedy for if we decide to go with additional days or lower the time. And then the next thing, does the old station Greyhound bus, does it have air conditioning?
It does.
It does?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then a question I would have is why, if we use the bus station when it's cold, why have we considered using it when it's hot?
We haven't, and that is one of the reasons is because community centers, as I mentioned earlier, they're always open and already have staff there. So there's not an additional expense. If we were to use the Greyhound Bus Depot as a cooling center, we would need to probably provide additional staff. There would be some additional expenses. We certainly could look at that, but those are the reasons why.
Okay, that would be a question that I have. And the other, and looking at the temperatures, the variations, climate change. With the unknowns with climate change, we have been experiencing some irregular weather conditions here in Solano County, in our area. That taken into consideration when you were preparing your charts?
Well, I pulled historical weather data. So as much as the weather patterns could be included there, they are. I am not a meteorologist or a weather person, so I can't really look into the future and project that way.
Okay.
I don't know if you had a more specific question I could answer, but.
Yeah. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Councilmember Wiley.
Thank you for putting this information together really rather quickly because we just brought it up after the last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. So I really appreciate you getting this together and being able to present it. And I am interested in making some tweaks, and I hope we can come up with something that will give you some directions along those lines. Because in looking at the current levels, it says these are what we have because if its conditions were worse than this, it's a significant threat to life. And I don't want anyone to be put at a significant threat for life because they are out in the cold and the rain. And I don't want to provide housing for everyone in Vacaville that doesn't have a place to be, but I don't want to put people out there. And a lot of the people that are finding themselves on the street, so many other medical conditions that something that might not be a significant threat for my life does pose a significant threat for someone else's life. So I feel like I'm really glad we're taking the time to look at this right now. I have two questions. One, on the temperature chart, it really isn't very helpful, I don't think, when we look at the temperature chart because the humidity level starts at 40. And in California, in Vacaville, our humidity level in the summer is never really at 40%. So it's then reading this chart then, if you just go across like at 102, it's going to feel like 102. But it won't be feeling 114 because that shows 40% humidity. So it won't, so the way it looks at it then, the 102 isn't going to seem hotter than it is like on this chart. Because if you look at the chart, 102 feels like 114, 119, 124, but mostly 102 feels like 102 because of the humidity. So I just think if people don't see how that chart is written or devised, 102 is never going to feel like 124 here in Vacaville. So whatever. And then my other question is, you said a while ago that some jurisdictions follow the county's lead. So does Solano County have parameters or not?
I think and for cooling centers, I had a little bit of a harder time finding very specific triggers for those, but the county follow National Weather Service heat advisory kind of model. So the NWS kind of makes a heat advisory, then they'll usually suggest that cooling centers open. Again, they have the libraries, and so they're not opening any other specific cooling centers, but that's the model that they follow.
Okay. So I'm anxious to hear what other council members have to say as well, but hopefully we can get off the 32 and at least go to 35, if not beyond. And the rain, I mean, when we had the last meeting was just after some other rainy days too, and so I was really wondering what our people are doing in Vacaville that didn't have homes when we had, those prolonged rainy days and then just dreary days without, because if you're wet and everything you own is wet, you don't dry out during the day. So I'm anxious to hear my fellow council members.
And I did want to respond to the Vice Mayor's question about have we reached out to medical facilities? We haven't so far, but I think that's a great suggestion, and we can certainly do that.
Councilmember Stockton.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. While I was kind of surprised to see this put on today's agenda, because we've discussed this at length, I think, several times. I think what really, I feel like we're trying to put a Band-Aid over something bigger. And, we've had a lot of interaction in trying to find something permanent that is open all of the time. And I really think that's what's needed. Like, this is talking about emergency shelter, not comfort shelter, right? Like, this is for people dying or serious injury to health.
Exactly.
But I also recognize that there is, a portion of our unhoused. I know that the pit count was a little under 200 people. It may be a little higher, a little lower, depending upon the day, the time, or whatever. But that being said, we've had a lot of conversations about temporary supportive housing with wraparound service or navigation center or something that is open with normal hours all the time to accommodate not only maybe this need or in addition to what we're doing already, but for all of those extra things. And so, I really appreciate the Vice Mayor's, comment about reaching out to the hospitals or folks with funding that may be able to provide some wiggle room for us to maybe do something. But I'm also interested, I know that we're deficit spending and money is tight. But are there projects that can be, where we can unencumber money or where we might be able to phase them in over time to try to maybe purchase a permanent property that we could accommodate all of these things? Because I feel like that's really what's needed. I feel like this is just folks that recognize we need to do better and we need to do more, but that it's just not the right tool, right? I think we need something permanent in the right location that's going to be able to serve folks and provide those wraparound services. And so I am interested, like, if there are folks that are willing to provide funding to look into that, but I'm also really hesitant to change what we have existing if we're unaware of what those additional costs will be. None of us can control the weather. But that being said, what are the costs that we've incurred fit with the current conditions that we have or the current, factors that are considered before we open this center? Do you have that?
Sure, yep. To activate the warming center, which is the Greyhound Bus Depot, it's approximately $3,000 a night.
Okay, and how much money do we, because I know we dedicated some money to that.
We did. You originally earmarked $50,000 of ARPA funds, and we have been working those kind of each year. So we still have a small little segment of those funds that we're hoping will accommodate the extreme weather warming center this year. After that, we'll have to find a different mechanism. When we're looking at this slide that shows kind of how many nights we would activate at the different triggers, I did do a quick cost estimate, kind of looking in the middle of the estimated total nights of the winter season. So at 32 degrees, 6 nights would be $18,000. We looked at the 35-degree level at 15 nights, that's $45,000, and then at the 40, it's $114,000, just to give you some context.
And how much money do we have that rolled over, do you know?
Right now, we have about $16,000 left.
Okay, those are my questions for now.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes. So $3,000 a night, so I'm looking at information, based on that. And if we go to table 2, estimated number of nights meeting each temperature threshold, if you would be so kind, 1 to 3 nights or 3 to 8 nights, total nights per winter season. So let's just call it 8 nights. And then if we were to go to step that up just to 35 as the new threshold, and let's go to the maximum on that one, possibly also say 20 nights. So I do the math on that, and we're talking about human lives here. So where's the number for that? But here's the thing: I have other concerns. We are heading into a new season right now that we have not experienced for the last decade. I am looking at, an increase of $34,000 that the city's going to have to come up with right now. And as of December 19th, we're going to have a whole lot of people here in Vacaville that don't have a way to get down and pick up groceries down off of Monte Vista. And it's going to affect a lot of homeless people. It's going to affect a lot of low-income people. It's going to affect a lot of kids in our most needy communities. And for me to be thinking about focusing on people that have choices on lifestyle, and I'm not condemning anybody for that. I know how hard it is to be living that life. But when I'm thinking about all of the other needs right now, and this is something that we haven't even started to address as a city or a city council or as a community, or what are we going to do? 100,000 meals were served out of, 100,000 people were served out of We Love Our City down here in Vacaville, and it's gone away. And I know some of the reasons why, and they're terrible reasons, but it's real. And so I would much rather see us spend money on trying to figure out how we can get buses into our area housing place, people that are in need, and get people that don't have a vehicle to get out to Horseshoe out there by the Father's house, where they're going to be keeping people moving through there. I'd much rather spend our money on people getting served that way in our communities that we don't even know what that looks like yet, you guys. We don't even have a clue. So before we just start spending more money on something that obviously is important, we have something I think that is even more important on the horizon that we haven't even begin to feel that's going to look like. They're still going to be serving up food. They're still going to be, but the people that need it the most they're going to be the ones that are going to have a hard time getting out there. So right now for me, that's something I would love to see more discussion of immediately, because I think it's going to be detrimental to our neediest in our community.
Vice Mayor Chapman.
I wanted to inquire, the estimates that you place on each 32, 35 degree, do you have that broken down as to what does that number comprise of?
On this slide, is this slide you're?
What did you say? How many thousands for?
Oh, I don't have that on a slide, but I can certainly provide it for you. But the rough estimate is $3,000 a night.
Okay, and that 3,000, what's up that 3,000?
Sure. So we have an attendant who stays overnight in the facility. We also hire security. We hire, we have to do ServPro to do cleaning at the end of those each stay. We also have crew. Crew, I will say, is the biggest expense, and we're working with them to kind of bring that number down. So we could see a little wiggle room there. Those are some of the key areas of what the expense are. So security, crew, the attendant, Public Works also opens and closes the building each time we activate it. So there's an expense there as well. And then ServPro for the cleaning.
All right, before I open up to the public for comment, this is something that I've heard a lot coming from this discussion, and obviously any loss of life is too many. And there's no doubt, I've seen it firsthand, that there is risk for anyone living on the street because of the conditions, whether it's cold, it's wet, unsanitary, all the above. But we've repeatedly heard people, so many people died in Vacaville this year, last year. I'm interested in knowing how many people died because they froze to death in the future. And the reason is because I wholeheartedly believe that there are those who die on the street because of illnesses and because of injury and because of sickness and because it's unsanitary. But I also don't want to conflate what needs to be a practical decision versus an emotional one. It is cold here. It's cold today. I get it. It's also not Minneapolis cold. And so to some degree, I think it's important, and even when we hear from the public, that over time, that somehow there's information that comes back to the council that says our decisions in here have a real impact versus just a feeling, a sense of, are we being too harsh? Is it unkind? Is it unhealthy? All those are valid. But when we start attaching that and then they're anecdotal and they're not confirmed, then I think that it becomes a problem for the city when we're making decisions. So I don't expect that you have the answer to that question.
I do have an answer to the question, because I did touch base with crew in putting this presentation together, and they're obviously much more in touch with the statistics on deaths from folks that are unhoused and living on the streets. Their understanding is that there have been no deaths that are strictly related to exposure or the weather.
Okay. I didn't know that. I suspected it. It's probably not that, but it's inhumane to be freezing outside. I totally get that. But I do believe in the future when we do look at reports back to the council, it will be helpful to say, last year we have a population of X. How many homeless? And what we know about them are these. How many of them have had responses to the ER because of an injury or an overdose or something, so that we actually get more context to the conditions. This is just one condition, right? It's cold, or it's because it's cold and it's wet. So I just think that this will be important. Just some feedback for the future. We're here tonight for cooling and warming. The reality is the biggest issue is we're heading into the winter months. So with that, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open up to the public for comment. We certainly know that the discussion in front of us is providing direction and input for any potential changes. And in as much as this can go both directions, heating and cooling, I think the real issue right now is going to be because it's cold. It's winter time. So good evening.
Thank you. As I always start, thank each of you for sitting in the chairs that you do. Appreciate all of your fine work. In response to Vice Mayor Chapman, you should know that when the churches were allowed to house, and at one point we had several churches that were doing housing, but because of losing religious status and tax exemption, we can no longer do that, and that's why we stopped doing it in churches. But we in the roundtable that you invited me to participate in at that time, we got together with the 3 hospitals, and there was a presentation how it cost them each $1 million per hospital for the homeless. It's $3 million. And so we went and asked them for $10,000 each, what they gave us, just like that. It was one call I made to each of the 3 of them. So there was $30,000 we had from the hospitals for the winter program. So I think that you could easily do that again. And with inflation, you might be asking for $15,000 or $20,000. I appreciate all of your comparisons, but I'd also like to just add some other trigger points. Santa Clara County has a 35-degree trigger point for 2 or more days. Marin County has a 38-degree trigger point for a minimum of 3 days. San Francisco has a 37-degree trigger point. The city of Livermore has a 45-degree trigger point when there's a 20% chance of rain. These, if you add them all together, it seems like a 38 is a minimum that we would want to consider to be sound. And Councilmember Tremo, I totally agree with you as far as where we ought to be putting our money. But since I'm on the board of one food bank and I work very closely with all 5 food banks, there isn't any of one of our 5 food banks that's turned anybody away yet for food. We've all had a 30 or 40% increase, but the donations come in and we go and buy food and we feed. And anybody who wants to be fed in Vacaville can go to every one of those 5 and get enough meals for their families for 9 days. And so if you go around to all 5 of them, you can do that, and they're around the area. So I would hope that we might opt for using our funds creatively, going to the hospitals for that, and raising the temperatures up where they are closer to 38 to 40 degrees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I want to, and I appreciate you and your concern for the budget, but remember, budgeting is about setting your priorities. So I want to talk about the cost of to open up the warming center. The numbers I have are quite different from what the assistant city manager is giving me. And let me show you what I was given from the city. Public Works per night, $730. The crew, $2,100. And remember, we had one call for service, and that was a medical call, which ended up saving a person's life. There have been no incidents, and to use ARPA funds, I know it's allowed, but to use it for the crew, which should be paid out of general fund, is, in my opinion, inappropriate use of the money. The next thing is security. I don't know what the contract is. I have to assume $500 a night is your contract with the security service. The attendant, we know he gets paid $225 a night. Utilities, $100, and ServPro, $450. Why don't we hire a local cleaning company? I'm sure we have some that. And mind you, the cleaning consists of 2 bathrooms. $450. This is a government budget where I think everybody is taking advantage of the city because we are a government, right? So we can go to 35, take out the $2,100 from the crew, which should not be part of this nightly cost, and down to $2,100, which is doubling the number of nights open at 35 degrees. So I understand the concern about budgeting, but I think the budget that has been proposed, or at least given to me, is way off, and we can double the number of nights open and going down to 35 degrees. I hope you would certainly consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Dennis, and would you allow me to give my 3 minutes to the lady behind me?
No.
No? All right, we tried.
Hello,
That's okay. I'm still generous with the time to finish a thought, so.
my name is Gail Thompson, and there's a couple of things I want to address here. First of all, many of our homeless do not have a choice in where they are in life. 64%, that's 64% of all homeless suffer from some form of mental illness. And I just attended the Solano County courts today on some of their programs, and I was told that number is very low, that it's much higher than that. So when you're mentally ill and you're living on the streets, you don't have much of a choice. And when you're living on the streets, and I had a lady tell me who had never done drugs, she was on the streets because she had had a stroke and could no longer work. Tell me, when you're under that bridge and it's raining and the rats and the raccoons come up and the raccoons are mating and the rats are chewing on your blanket and somebody hands you something and says, take this, it'll go away. She says, I took it. And I think I would too. North Bay last year spent $20 million on charity care. That's $20 million. Fairfield, I just spoke with a city council member before coming here when we were at one of their court programs. They don't have a protocol. I asked, they do not have a protocol. They rely on a church. They're on Union Avenue, Pastor Morris Church. The warming center doesn't need the crew. They're a great bunch of people. I love working with them, but they don't belong at the warming center. When you have 4 and 5 police cars lined up in front, many of our homeless could just keep riding their bikes by. They're afraid they're going to be checked for warrants or other things. So the crew is not needed. As Skip said, there were no calls for service other than a medical call for a heart attack. ServPro, $450 a night, and like Skip said, there's 2 bathrooms to clean, 2. And if you're projected to have the warming center open for 2 nights in a row, it doesn't have to be cleaned every night. Food trucks. That was something that was brought up with the storehouse closing. I'm talking now with the storehouse and trying to get many of those meals, 500 of them a week, to redistribute them throughout the city of Vacaville. As Danny well said, if you're hungry in Vacaville, it's because you haven't walked to one of the food banks. Food is available. The farthest house also has food trucks go into what's considered the desert areas, some of the apartment complexes where there's a high number of need, a lot of low income. Father's House visits those sites on a regular basis and distributes food. The warming center saves lives. I asked an officer, if I tied my dog, which I would never do, by the way, up to a fence and the weather was 35 degrees outside, would I be in trouble? His response was, hell yeah, I'd have to arrest you. That's my dog. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about their well-being. Vacaville is an extremely generous community. There is no reason why we have not one person die on the street, whether it's from drug use, which should not be a death sentence in Vacaville. Fentanyl is rapid in Vacaville. Crystal meth is rapid in Vacaville, and that has no reflection on our police department. That has a reflection of our nation as a whole and what the drugs are doing.
Thank you.
One quick question. Is there anybody here that would support raising the threshold on the warming center? Please raise your hands.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tina. I've been helping the homeless here in Vacaville for 5 years. I prepared 40 to 60 meals every week out of my kitchen. I delivered them in bags to people behind dumpsters, under bridges, wherever I found them, in doorways, everywhere. Did that for 2 years. I started helping making the dinners over at the Andrews Park on Sundays from 1 to 3. We feed between 40 and 60 people. Bunch of kids got together. I told them get a name, get registered with the city. They call themselves Voices of Vacaville. I am one of their main suppliers of donations. I put the word out on Nextdoor for donations for men's clothing, warm blankets, donations. I pick them up from all over Vacaville. I'm a 100% disabled vet, shattered my back, surgeries, plates and screws everywhere. I've been watching these people out in the conditions that they live in. I have called the ambulance and paramedics, 5 of them. One of them, I saved his feet from being amputated, and it was because he was hypothermic and cold. It was 40 degrees. I just know that they need help. And raising the temperature to where they can handle this cold. I've been providing blankets. I get blankets from a lady that cleans airplanes, military aircraft. She's got probably 1,000 of them in a storeroom because they use them once and throw them away. So I get them, I wash them, I fold them, I put them in Pack's Hen, and I deliver them. Another friend of mine, he had to leave tonight. He started a nonprofit called Mother's Blanket, and I have been supplying him about 120 blankets a week from this lady that has been helping me. I also take anywhere from 20 to 30 every Sunday to the park, along with all the donations that I have. I've helped fill their storeroom with donations. So I'm always doing something to try and help these people because they need it. My dad, that's all he ever did was hire people that were homeless. They were the hardest workers, they needed the money, they needed the work, they needed the companionship even. I don't know what else to say. I just wanted to let you know I'm just a regular citizen that started on my own 5 years ago, and I work with a lot of people, and I do this out of my garage.
Yeah,
Thank
you. Thank you. I know you already, yes, you did. So I'm not going to repeat, I'm not going to allow you to. Okay, why don't you come forward? If you could just make it brief because you already have spoken. Come forward first. Yeah. But before you start speaking, that way I can turn the mic on.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys letting me speak again. I wasn't prepared to speak in the beginning. So I know we're all focused on the unhoused, and I am too. They're the core issue of people that are going to need the services for the warming and the cooling center. But I will tell you that I even, as a house person, when I was having issues with my heater, thought I wanted to go there, okay? I've had issues with my apartment building not fixing my AC, and the cooling center saved me from being hospitalized. It's not just our unhoused individuals. So I just wanted to bring that perspective because I don't think that you think that anybody else are using these services. I'm one person that's housed and has utilized it, and it saved me. Just letting you know. You guys have a blessed night.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this public comment portion, bring it back to the council. From a staff perspective, was there any questions in there that you feel that you want to touch on?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to address Mr. Thompson's comments about the budget, and he's not wrong. The numbers he has related to the budget are numbers I provided him for past years. And if you'll remember, the warming center's just been operational two seasons. And so kind of been figuring it out a little bit as we go. What can we tweak? What can we reduce? What makes the most sense? And so the numbers he has are a little bit higher. I have worked with crew and with the police chief to see, how many officers do we really need? Do we need them at all? Is it one? Is it maybe just, driving through and checking in? So those are things we're still looking at. And so that's why the number that we're looking at projecting as an estimate, the $2,900 for this year, is lower than it has been in the past, with still, we're still talking about what that could look like. So it could definitely come down. Related to crew being charged to that budget that was with ARPA funds, the crew component really has been absorbed by the PD's operational budget because they've had some capacity there. So we have not been charging the crew component to those ARPA funds.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councilmember Stockton?
Yes, what I was going to say is I definitely think we should seek some of these funding revenue streams from the, we've heard North Bay a couple times today. Somebody said 3 hospitals. I think that would be absolutely wonderful. I'd be more apt to expand things if I knew that we had the funding. At the current location right now, I know, there was a large business group that isn't here today, but certainly was very clear about, and I think has been more welcoming and open about it because they know that there are people there on site. So I'm not prepared to remove that component from the funding. But what I will say is, while we may be speaking to these churches about funding for emergency shelter, if they are spending $20 million a year per location, and we might be able to partner with them, find something that is permanently located and has the wraparound services that I know that we've heard so much about, I would prefer that we look at that option rather than try to adapt something that technically isn't made for that. That being said, I know it takes time to build or to purchase a property, to renovate a property, to do all the things that are needed for it to be habitable for people to live in that. So what I would say is, I would be comfortable if you're able to obtain funding and we can expand the days, then maybe we could revisit this if there's funding for that. But as it stands right now, there's not. And so That's my concern. So I don't know if what it would take, or if, how, if this is a phone call, or maybe you could just give us kind of like a staff update at a future meeting. And then maybe what we could do, I mean, I know we have a meeting on Tuesday. I don't know if you can make phone calls tomorrow to find out if there are revenue streams that we haven't explored yet. But I would love to hear an update maybe on Tuesday if you do have some success with that. But outside of that, I'm inclined to keep it the way that it is.
We can certainly do our best.
Thank you.
Yeah, and certainly that this is all discussions even towards our homeless action plan moving forward, the more strategic discussion. I completely agree with you, Councilmember Stockton, that there's a greater impact, and in that there could be an economy of scale, especially for those knowing that, yes, the homeless may show up because it's cold, and the implications of that. Prevention goes a long way, and even in our homeless community as well. Vice Mayor Chapman.
Thank you. Quickly, I don't know if this is possible, but when you reach out to the hospitals here in Vacaville, see if it's possible, or ask, and they may tell you that they can't, but inquire number of homeless, unsheltered visits that they have during the winter, the severe weather, the severe conditions.
Extreme weather.
The extreme weather, thank you. During extreme weather, either cold or hot, where the conditions were due to the weather conditions. They should have that data available. And I think it would help, because of the questions that come up. You have it. Oh, okay. Okay, you can get it. Thank you.
Councilmember Wiley.
I think strategy's good to look at what is going to happen and the JPA and looking at down the road, can we have a permanent place? But this is December. It's cold. It's going to be cold in December and January. It won't be on the agenda again. I think since we passed the budget, we've had at least 3 or 4 or 5 budget augmentations on the agenda. And I just want to say, I would like to raise it from at least 32 to 35. And I don't know if there's anyone else that feels that, or if the rest of us are waiting to say, we'll see what North Bay says and we'll see what other people say. But so I've heard a couple people say they're not inclined to, but we haven't heard from any. So I just wanted to see if there's anyone who hasn't commented that is inclined to make a change, because this is the time to do it. It's December now. It won't be on the agenda again this season.
Councilmember Silva.
Yeah, thank you. So this site, is rumored to be different, to serve different purposes. This site just happens to fall within the district boundaries that we define of what I represent. I'm always amazed at nobody reaching out to me to get my opinion based on the feedback that I'm getting, not just on this, but the Trower Center, the storehouse, all these different items that where other people feel that they have the best assessment or know the solution forward. I grew up in this area, born Vallejo like everybody else back in the day, and these are where my roots are. My family picked the trees in the fields. We have a different perspective of of the city and its history and its potential, and the different struggles. So on this particular item, there's different ways to look at this, and I want to encourage council to reach out to me, and talk about how this impacts these communities. We all have different connections and different experiences, and a lot of those are politically, and this in itself can be considered one of those. So in this particular case, there's different lenses that this can be looked at. One of which, to the mayor's point, we have the data that if I recall right, I don't remember seeing the attendance, but with the current data, 32 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 days, with those other exceptions. I think we get, what's the total, what was the range, 17 to 25 people that attended in the past? Something like that, right? I think one day was up to 25 as a max or something like that, or something. Okay, so we've been eyeballing that, so average of 15. So when these other areas that in themselves have an increase where they have a higher temperature, do they see a difference in the attendance in those particular facilities? And maybe we don't have that type of data at this point.
I don't have that data for you at this point. And I will say with the warming center, even though we maybe have 12 to 15, some of those are there for a few minutes, some of them stay all night. So it's not consistent.
Yeah, so if you think, so I'm just putting myself in that shoe. It's extra cold, right? So it's 32 degrees Celsius. We have an average of, I'll say 20 on a peak, okay? So 20 on a peak evening or night, excuse me, that attend. So by increasing the temperature, I'm curious to see how that would change that dynamic, okay? Now, one of the things that comes up is like, what is the actual need? Because the title of it is extreme weather warming and centers under emergency type situations. 32's freezing, by definition. 32 Fahrenheit is freezing for water temperature, and 35 is cold as well. Now, I'm not in touch with every single business owner in that particular area, but the greater concern for efforts like these is what are we transpiring and stepping towards? Because at one point this was a designated or an anticipated spot for a navigation center with housing and whatnot, and nobody had engaged those particular those business owners in that particular area. That said, several business owners, while they don't like the idea of it, in other efforts, crew particularly, giving credit where credit's due there, took a lot of proactive measures in order to address another area that in itself wasn't being addressed as far as what was causing the blight and different struggles that they were pursuing. So in a weird way, in many ways, it actually helped increase their particular surroundings. And I hope that council continues to support different ways within our capacity to further activate that particular area, because that one it's designed a bit different. So that's where the Allison, Peabody Parkway plan can apply to. So some of the folks there are understanding of why we would want to increase, or why some would want to increase the temperature from a 32 to a higher temperature. And I'm inclined to understand and definitely empathize with that. To like if it's a suggestion to 35 degrees or whatnot. For me, I don't see the data to support adding an additional cooling center based on what's being presented. So for me to support an additional cooling center, that in itself doesn't make sense to me when there's already other opportunities that are there. It's still unclear to me how, and Mr. Wells, I really need to connect with you. I'm still unclear on this and other items, but I'm still unclear on what the challenge is or what it would take to support more smaller developments that we've talked about as far as the council with the recent homeless strategic plan on, what would it look to put for quote unquote tiny homes on existing facilities for more permanent housing to address some more of the fundamental concept that's not a Band-Aid fix or something to that effect, or we don't get triggered like folks like me from my upbringing were thinking like, hey, this is all part of some type of conspiracy to create something that's going to be much more challenging for us to deal with. So I'm still unclear on that aspect. I appreciate Councilmember Stockton's comments about looking at the impact of cost to our local healthcare providers and how that bogs it up. I worked years in the emergency room. I worked almost 10 years in healthcare overall. So I'm very well in tune to what we would call a revolving door and the consequences that puts into impacting and delivering quality healthcare, access to healthcare to others, and seeing how what could that look like as far as maybe something that's more permanent. The biggest challenge we continue to face is we want to do good, we want to help people, and we want people to help themselves. But as I was mentioned, when we have a whole mental health component, to me, that's where maybe our legislative body can really start taking a much stronger active approach in figuring out how do we get these folks the help that they need that's outside the capacity of any local municipality, even if you're a city the size of Vacaville of 100,000 individuals. Mental health facilities across the board, I think, are better understood that that's something that's needed, and that's something the state got to figure out of how they help support our local communities. Otherwise, we keep, being in these situations where we're just chasing our own tail, it feels like. The other question I had, so that's basically the gist of it and where I stand, or kind of where I'm at on this whole situation. So just to clarify, I'm open to a 34-degree Fahrenheit increase. But as far as an additional opening over the summer months, that's kind of hard. If there's additional funding and as mentioned, different providers want to help support that, to me, that's really huge because there's the added benefit or net gain to them. And we need help. We need help.
I appreciate that. Before I go to you, Vice Mayor, I want to make a couple of comments. You need to, if you want to talk anytime, you can reach out to me. I'm not sure what that comment was about because I'm very much open, and I've been part of the roundtable before I retired for almost 7 years, and so I love to collaborate on those kinds of issues. As far as temperature, I too, I'm okay with increasing, a few degrees because what's the difference? At 32, you're freezing. Right? We know that there are health implications that are less than death. Nonetheless, they are health implications. I totally get that. And so the 40-degree increment, I think that is fine. I'm okay with, like some of the other ones, under 35 for, 2 consecutive days. We can explore that and see what that does, right? And the impacts. It's a little bit. In doing something incrementally, we can determine whether or not it increased the rate. You'd think if it's colder, more people would show up. Mm-hmm. So the truth is if you raise it 2 degrees, is it really going to, we'll open it. If we do that, then I would want to see what were the real numbers. And so in the future, it isn't just the overall numbers and per night. Attach the weather to it. So in the future, imagine that if it's open, there's notes to that, and that is it was one of 3 days that was projected to be 34 or less, and the precipitation was X. And that way we can look back, and I know sometimes you also ask for the data. I do too. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of data that says, was it worth it? And did it increase or decrease the amount of people? So that's some feedback in general on that. I'm not interested in another cooling center. I understand that it can get hot in Vacaville. Our heat index, the higher it goes, the drier it gets. We have open businesses and buildings to do that. I also don't think that this is the right time to be trying to dive into that, but those are just my comments because that's part of it. I totally appreciate we're dealing with people who don't often know how to make a good decision, especially if there's mental illness. It is a bigger problem to deal with. In the meantime, let's just address the temperature issue. And we certainly know, it's been said before, the issues of the Greyhound station not being a permanent place. So, and I appreciate the comments that there are ways to get food. There's a lot of organizations that can do that, and hopefully, with the reconstitution of the roundtable, there can be better coordination and communication of those kinds of resources that are available. Vice Mayor Chapman.
Thank you. A few things. Councilmember Silva, I meant no harm when I mentioned when I inquired whether there was an air condition at the present site at the old Greyhound depot. I was just, so I won't linger on that, but I really wasn't trying to, because first of all, the other thing I wanted to point out, when we opened the station, the depot, it was temporary, and hopefully it's still temporary. It was, I don't know how much research or how much it's been done by the city manager. The new city manager probably hasn't had enough time. She's been here for less than 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I will call our Housing and Community Services Director, Tamara Colden. She has been working on that RFP process. So if you would like to come and speak a little bit on that.
Wonderful. See there, Council Member Silva.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Tamara Colden, Director with Housing and Community Services. So yes, after the
approval of the Homeless Action Plan back in October, we started taking the steps that were listed for this fiscal year. In phase one of the plan, number one being start attending the Homeless Roundtable. So I had the opportunity to meet all these wonderful people last month during their November meeting and did a presentation on the plan and next steps, which includes the first steps towards putting together that RFP for a more permanent warming and cooling center location. The first thing that I did was got some of the information that Assistant City Manager Georgianne put together with previous questions and comments about what it would take to have something more permanent from some of our partners. The second step that I will do in putting together that RFP is going back to our partners to make sure that we develop something when we put it out, it will be something that people will respond to. Along with getting that information back from our partners, I have been looking at what some of our local cities have been doing. So I've looked at the RFPs and MOUs that Fairfield and Vallejo have with some of their community partners. And then the third thing I'm doing is looking at funding sources. How can we fund whatever that cost will be? And once I put all that information together, that will come back to you guys for direction on what that RFP will look like. So the comment about seeing what the hospitals have and can they contribute to that, that is on my list of what are those funding sources and where can that come from to have a more permanent warming and cooling center that not only is open during emergencies, but offers those services, those supportive services to link those in need with other resources that can help move them to a more permanent supportive housing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for contributing to that.
I wasn't finished. That's the only reason.
That's right. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wasn't, yeah, thank you. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm in support, I would like, I don't know if it would be done this evening, Mayor Carley. However, the suggestion that we do a temporary increase of the temperature for this season, I'm in support of it. And I know it won't go, but I would even ask for 38 degrees instead of the 35 degrees. And I'm only saying that because of the temps in other areas, and the average there came up to about 38 degrees. Of all of those, it was 35, 38, 37, and 45. So, yes, no.
Well, okay, Councilmember Stockton was next, but then based upon that, I'm not sure. Councilmember Stockton, did you have something pressing?
Just a question. You said we had enough for 16 or 18 days left in the bank. Where's the money going to come from once that runs out? That's the only question that I have. If we go beyond that, whether it stays at 30 days, or excuse me, at 32 degrees or 35 degrees, what is the plan if that money runs out or when it runs out?
And we don't have enough for 15 or 16. That $16,000 is what we have in the bank. So you're looking at about 5 days, which has, historically been kind of the average, 5 days and then 6 days for the warming center. But the plan is that should we see a need to open additional nights, need additional funding, we would come back to council and ask for budget augmentation.
And do we have any funding mechanisms that I'm unaware of that can subsidize what we're talking about?
As we're going through this budget process and looking at, where we can cut costs and find things, we would certainly explore all of our options. There's not anything off the top of my head where there's a fund that we could tap into, but we'll explore that.
But at the 32 degree level, we currently have enough for what we anticipate.
Yes,
okay,
that's
it.
Councilmember Wiley.
I just wanted to mention where Dr. Chapman was saying 35 versus 38. Since we do have a component for wind chill, and I don't think the other one did, I think often it might be 38, but with a wind chill, so it feels like 35. So that's why 35 with a wind chill, so it feels cold, or 38 with a wind chill. So anyway, that's why I was comfortable with not making a huge jump at 35, but maintaining the wind chill aspect. So if it's 38 and a wind chill, it'll feel like 35.
And I am supportive, like I said, 35. But I want us to track this in the future to determine whether or not it really has value. And I would support that as well. Well, the reason why I say that is we talk about data all the time. And then what we hear is all these people who die, and it's terrible. But what we also hear is that nobody died because they froze to death. What I'm saying is if we're going to look back and say, what was the difference between 32 and 35 degrees? Well, keep track of some data on those days so that when it comes back, it says, here were the real costs, here were the conditions when we did it. Because what we do is we just aggregate. We aggregate an average when we look back and we come up here and we're asking for information. So that's my ask. I mean, you don't have to agree with me, but that's my ask. Councilmember Wiley.
Well, it was just when you said value. So I understand data is important too. And an item like this, we don't want any data that says this person died or this person died here, that or that. So it's value to the people who are being out of the elements. And so that's my value thing. But since you were talking about data, I understand data. And I do like the fact about keeping track of what the temperature was.
Yes. Do you have the information that you need? Councilmember Freeman.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in favor of bumping it up. Yeah, I would like to see it when anybody's cold that they had a place to go. And I know Gail, you and Skip work really hard serving this community, as do many of you, and I applaud you for that. And like I said, I think anybody should, if you're cold, if it's 50 and the wind's blowing, I mean, I know what it's like when I go out and it's 45 degrees in the morning and I think about these things. You know, the sun hasn't come up yet and there's dew everywhere. And I know the tents are wet and sleeping bags that are touching the corners of the plastic and the tents that these people are holed up in, you know, are, so I have a heart for that. So I'm in support of moving this up a little bit. I also want to say too, and I don't mean to sound harsh, but I know when I was living a life that wasn't the right kind of living for myself, I think desperation was the biggest motivating factor for me for changing my lifestyle and starting down that trail for to change my life. You know, desperation is a really good motivator. I'm not saying that I want to see somebody lose their toes or suffer irreversible harm, that maybe they're not sick, but maybe they got sick because it was 32 degrees or 32 and a half degrees, didn't quite, you know, whatever. And, you know, maybe somebody gets sick and eventually dies of pneumonia or something unrelated. So, but I applaud especially you, Gail and Skip, for all of your efforts. And so I'm ready to make a motion to move this up just for the summer months to 35 if the rest of the council is ready to go on it.
Well, I'm not sure that this is something that requires a motion just an overall, but I think you have the majority. There's at least 4 or 5 that have said that, yes.
I think it would be helpful if the council, we could kind of at least get a survey of
That's
the
the whole point.
temperature and the majority. More definitive direction for staff would be helpful, please.
Well, what I've heard right now is there seems to be at least, 5 of the 6 that have said that, and I don't know if Councilmember Stockton, you had any other thing you wanted to weigh in on.
My concern is just where the money's going to come from. Like, if it would be easier to be more flexible if we knew we had a steady funding stream. I'm comfortable going up to 45 degrees if we had the funding. Like, so I guess what I would be interested in knowing is if we had the money from North Bay or whatever to cover the cost, like I'm not going to put if we have the capability to take better care of people, that's fine. I know that we don't have money. And so my concern is making sure that we are able to open that when it truly is an environment where people could have a higher probability of death, right? Because if we open it up at 45 and we run out of money and we can't open it up when it's 30 or 29 or whatever, what are we gonna do? Right? So rather, if we're going to take this approach, I would much rather go with the option where we leave it to the city manager's discretion to open it when she feels like it needs to be opened. And I agree with checking the data points to see how many people are coming. If you open it up at 40 degrees, and nobody shows up, well, maybe we don't need to open it next time it's 40 degrees and we need to bump it down, to whatever. But it sounds like we only have 5 days of money. So I don't know how this is going to affect that. And that's why it's difficult for me to make a decision. It's not that I don't want to take care of people. It's just gotta have money to do it.
Yeah, if you could address that, because I think the key really is the council wants some surety that there is looking for the funds to be able to, offset some of these changes, right?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I hear your concern on just making sure there's funding to cover it. And so in the housing budget, there is some funding that is earmarked for homelessness projects, and that we can work with, and I will definitely work with the city manager's office once the costs are refined to see if that can be covered out of or can be taken from that budget.
Okay.
So with that, 35 is okay? Okay. Yes.
Just one clarification, it could be the 35 could be with the wind chill factor.
That's correct, because ours has conditions as well, just like it was 32.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Can I just say one more thing? Just in the defense of ServPro and running a small business, there's no way I could have showed up for $450. I mean, I know it sounds like you're just wiping down a toilet, spraying some things down, but you gotta clock them in. They got to get ready, personal protective equipment, so on and so forth. So, and I'd do it for $450, but that's not the way that it works, right? So, anyways, I just don't want to make them out to, sound bad.
All right. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, the other thing that I would ask is if we do increase the number of people that attend, I would just like some frequent updates on how it's going, not just with the attendance, but also I want to make sure I'm hoping that we continue to not have calls for service, medical or police related. So if we could just keep us informed of that, even if it's just informally through an email or something like that, would be helpful.
Yes, I appreciate that. And thank you from the public's perspective, for your perseverance and leaning in. This is the right time to make an adjustment. And so.
Quick question.
Yes.
Sorry. So this involves crew. Does maybe Chief have anything to add to this conversation that maybe already hasn't been discussed? Okay, thank you.
All right, so you have all the direction you need then? All right, so thank you. Appreciate the public comments tonight. And with that, we'll stand in adjournment. Good night, Vacaville.